4.5 months later, Zephyr took a warship and came to the beach of Khmer Island. Rumbling, there was a tremor in the jungle in front of them, and several huge beasts were rampaging, and all the giant trees blocking them were directly smashed and scattered in all directions. When they rushed out of the jungle, Zephyr realized that these 4 beasts were the 4 overlords on Khmer Island, and all of them possessed the strength of first-time lieutenant generals. Zephyr was a little puzzled. You must know that they were evenly matched in strength. Originally, they were kings but not kings. Why did they all pile up together this time? Roar! The ferocious beast has rushed forward, roaring loudly, and is about to attack Zephyr. Stop all of them. From behind the 4 ferocious beasts, suddenly there was a boy's roar, followed by a buzzing sound. A circle of blue-black aura swept across the entire beach in an instant, and these beast lords immediately froze as if they had been strangled by the neck, and their foreheads were covered with a line of cold sweat in a humane manner. Kindness? Zephyr was also swept by this circle of breath, and a look of shock finally appeared on his face. Overlord is domineering. Ace's talent really made Zephyr very satisfied. Originally, Zephyr planned to teach Ace the arrogance of the armed color for half a year. As a result, Ace had initially mastered the armed color a month ago. So Zephyr went back to the base to deal with official business, and planned to let Ace stay on the island for another month, so as to temper his armed domineering aura. But a month later, Ace actually awakened the overlord look? This is the unique arrogance of a king. It cannot be obtained through cultivation, and only 1 person in a million has it. The qualifications of a king. Teacher, I'm sorry, I still can't fully grasp the domineering look and arrogance. Ace said with a hint of apology on his face at this moment, having walked closer. Ha 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 ha, no need to apologize. It's too late for the teacher to be happy. Zephyr didn't mean to blame at all, but let out a burst of laughter. Also, what's going on with these 4 guys? Ace laughed when he heard the teacher say this, and said, this month, I have been listening to the teacher's words, not relying on flames, but relying on pure physical skills to challenge these guys. Fighting is really good for tempering domineering. I was able to completely master the armed color a few months ago, and what's more, in the constant battles, I awakened the overlord color. What Ace didn't say was that in fact, he had awakened the overlord color for the first time at the terminal of the uncertain object a year ago, but he couldn't release it at will at that time. Haha, I get it. Overlord color really has a miraculous effect on these beasts with insufficient intelligence. After you release Overlord color's arrogance, these guys will not want to fight you anyway. Zephyr looked at Ic. The more I look at it, the more satisfied I am. Ace nodded with a smile, and the 4 beasts whimpered at Ace, as if acting like a baby. Okay. I'm here to take you away. Zephyr reached out and handed Ace a piece of paper, and said, 2 months ago, the World Government Intelligence Organization informed us that the Kingdom of Gaia in the North Sea will be an underground auction in 3.5 months. Ace looked down at the information above and found that it was indeed the case. That is to say, the auction will be held in 1.5 months. Speaking of this, Zephyr paused, and said with a smile, remember the sharp knife I promised you earlier? There will be one in this auction. This time, I'll take you to take this auction and grab it for you. When Zephyr said this, his face was domineering, as if he didn't pay attention to the power of playing cards, stealing the country, inside. As expected of a former admiral, Ace said silently in his heart. After simply browsing the information, Ace boarded the giant ship with Zephyr and headed for the base. On Khmer Island, those beast lords waved goodbye in a humane manner and shed tears of farewell. Ace couldn't help being speechless for a while, but also a little moved. When he arrived at the base, Zephyr got off the boat directly, and asked Ace to go to the Kingdom of Gaia to step on it first, and first confirm the location of the auction item. 2 days before the start of the auction, Zephyr would take all the second stage students to carry the playing cards, snatch the auction items, and wipe out the underground forces who went to participate. Ace wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Who is the pirate? However, with a quasi-general and a luxurious lineup of top major generals, no matter how strong this playing card is, it will probably be crushed into powder. At this time, in the Kingdom of Gaia, ordinary residents and even the army did not know that their country had already changed its master. The kingdom is not big, so it only has a city guard army of 500 people. The sergeant major of the army is named Base. He has the strength of a major general at the beginning, but he is already over 50 years old. At this moment, Base was standing in a practice room in the barracks, and in front of him stood a young man with red hair. Holding the knife in both hands, the young man raised it high above his head, struggling to chop down again and again, exhausting his strength every time, and his clothes were already wet with sweat. Base looked at it for a long time, then sighed, and said, "It's almost time to rest. You've been training for a long time. It's pointless to force yourself, Willie." Willie stopped and responded respectfully, You were right, Lord Bath. But Base didn't see the slightest hint of giving up in his eyes, so he smiled and said, if you really feel that way, I hope you won't make me say that repeatedly. I'm very sorry. Willie bowed slightly. When Base said this, he had already taken out a long sword from the weapon holder on one side. How about it? Do you want to fight with me? But. Willie was taken aback, and didn't understand what the sergeant major meant. After all, he was just a small commander in the city guard, and his strength was not even at the school level. There was a wry smile on Bass's face, and he said, just recently, I seem to feel that something bad has happened to our country. Playing cards are becoming more and more rampant, but there is no sign of restraint in the palace. As the sergeant major of the kingdom, I have a responsibility. I'm going to destroy playing cards alone in 2 days. Before that, I want to find someone who can play a game. Would you like to? Base said. With his legs together, Willie felt the determination in Bath's voice. I am willing to accept Master Bath's guidance. However, I want to go with him and help him. First, the next step is not to give pointers. I hope you can fight as an actual battle. How much you can gain from the battle depends on yourself. Second, your current strength is too weak. Going with me is just a drag. Okay, let's start. Bass raised his sword in one hand and stood still. And Willie also completely threw out distracting thoughts from his mind, holding a shield in one hand and a knife in the other, with his legs spread apart, and he was ready to form a formation. He knew that Base was telling the truth. His strength was too weak. Even if he wanted to help the benefactor in front of him, he was just powerless. Since this is the case, then before that, let's fight with all our strength. Willie's eyes froze suddenly, and he kicked his right foot on the ground, raised the shield to his chest, and slammed into Base head on. The momentum is good. Bass laughed, and the long sword he held high slashed down, directly on Willie's shield. Clang. With a crisp sound, Willie's charge stopped abruptly, and he was bent slightly by the force of Bath's long sword. Willie clenched his teeth, held up his shield, and tried his best to hold on, but Buzz couldn't hold him down for a while. After a moment of stalemate, Bath's long sword was suddenly raised. Willie didn't react. His body staggered. Before he could stabilize his figure, Base raised his right foot and kicked it out. Thump. Willie fell heavily to the ground and let out a muffled groan, but immediately jumped up and sat up, raised his shield, and repositioned himself to face Base. Base didn't rush to attack, but slowly said, even if the enemy only has one sword in his hand, you can't just focus on his sword, otherwise, you will be hit by the enemy just like before. Kick it out. Yes. Willie had a sharp pain in his chest, but he still stood still and pointed the sword in his hand at Base. Oh? That's right. If it was an ordinary soldier, it would have been over with just one blow. There was a look of appreciation in Buzz's eyes. I must become stronger. In order to help Lord Bath. Willie's tone was full of determination. When Base heard this, he couldn't help being moved. He didn't expect the kid in front of him to have such firm belief for himself. So, for the first time, he took it seriously, holding his sword in both hands, and stood facing Willie. Well, come on, Willie. Yes. Willie let out a low cry, and immediately swung his knife and slashed at Base. Clang. Ba swung his sword upwards, first directly swung Willie away, and then slammed down, and slashed on Willie's shield again. It's a pity, Willie, it's the same result as last time. After saying this, Base kicked Willie's lower abdomen again. You. At this critical moment, Willie let out a deep roar. Holding the shield with his left arm, he cut obliquely to the front of his lower abdomen at a speed beyond his limit. Block. Pung. Buzz kicked on the smooth surface of the shield and slid away, losing his balance. Did I count my move? Base said in surprise. Yes. Willie threw the shield, without stopping, stepped forward, kicked the ground suddenly, his body jumped high, and then with the power of his falling body, he suddenly cut down with both hands holding the sword. Cut. A set of consecutive moves seems to be on the head of Base. Clang. At this moment, there seemed to be only an afterimage left on Bass's arm, and he raised his sword to block Willie's attack at the last second. Swish. With a wave of his hand, Willie was sent flying again, hit the wall, and then fell to the ground. Hoo. Willie panted heavily, lying on the ground and unable to stand up for a while. Ha ha ha, it's wonderful. Bass laughed, you did a good job. I took care not to hurt your bones when I swung the sword. Huh. That's just some skin trauma. Willie tried to stand up. No. Big problem. Lord Bath is really powerful, why am I? Willie looked a little disappointed. I just have a little bit of talent. Compared with those real powerhouses, I'm still far behind. Base put the long sword back into the weapon rack. Think more about the subsequent linking moves. Yes. I will. Sure enough, Willie was full of energy, and immediately agreed with full of fighting spirit. Master Chief. At this time, a soldier suddenly entered from the door, and both Base and Willie looked over at the same time. "What's the matter, Deputy Chief?" Base asked. Seeing that the sergeant major was busy, Willie saluted and left the practice room first. Seeing Willie go away, the deputy chief said to Base with some emotion, "The child you rescued from the street 10 years ago, I didn't expect it to be so big." "Yeah, this is a good boy." Base walked to the side of the deputy chief. "You fought with him. How was it? Is he talented?" the deputy chief asked with a smile. "No." Buzz's words shocked the deputy chief. "No matter how hard this kid works, he's only just entering the school level." Baston paused, and then said, "However, his talent has its limits, but by constantly honing his skills, it might be possible to improve his skills." Layer. When the deputy chief heard this, he sighed. "Sometimes, you can't become stronger just by working hard. It's a pity for this child. Help me prepare weapons and equipment, and I'll settle accounts with those bastards in poker." Bass's words interrupted the deputy chief's thinking. However, the king's order has not yet come down, and the opponent's strength has not yet been investigated. The deputy chief stopped with some worry. "Go. This is an order. I can't watch our country be destroyed by these scumbags." Bass's order was still firm. "Yes." The deputy chief understood Bass's determination, so he immediately stepped back and went to make final preparations for Base. An hour later, Base came near the only hospital in the city with his long knife on his back. This knife is unusually slender, the scabbard is black, with a cross pattern engraved from top to bottom, and the handguard is decorated with furry protection. If Ace was here, he would be able to recognize that this is the saber that later belonged to the death surgeon Luo. Ghost cries. What's even more coincidental is that in the library of this hospital, Trafalgar Law, wearing a striped velvet hat, is eagerly absorbing medical knowledge. The headquarters of Playing Cards is just behind this hospital. Bass's eyes were full of murderous intent, and he rushed towards that direction with his knife in hand. An hour, 2 hours. 1 day, 2 days. Base seemed to have completely disappeared there. A sergeant major at the major general level, the strongest in Gaia, just disappeared without a trace. The entire city guard frantically searched for the whereabouts of Base, but was suppressed by the palace sent people half a day later, leaving Willie alone in the end, who continued to search in the city. Half a month later, Ace finally arrived in the kingdom of Gaia on an ordinary merchant ship. The moment he stepped on the ground, he breathed a sigh of relief. Although the life on the boat was relatively convenient, Ace couldn't exercise in a big way because he wanted to hide his identity. Therefore, the progress of this half-month has been greatly slowed down. The property bar at this moment. Attributes. Constitution, Major General, 6 Spiritual Fire Essence Body Ju, the 3rd stage. Body Energy. 23 160ths Different Fire, Qinglian Earth Heart Fire. In the past half a month, the first level has not been improved, and the ability to reach the 6th level is still the result of the previous 4.5 months. Let's go. Let's go and see the local customs first. Ace received 50 in funding for this operation, so he was in a good mood and walked towards the center of the Gaia Kingdom. As a foodie, when you arrive at a place, of course you have to try the local food first. Although the Gaia Kingdom is small, because it is a transportation hub, the tourism industry has developed very well, so there are also several local delicious specialties that must be tasted. Guest officer, the braised jumping fish you ordered is here. A waiter put the plate on the table in front of Ace. When he lifted the silver cover on the plate, a strong aroma seemed to form. It lost its essence and slowly floated to Ace's face. Suck. Can't help but take a deep breath. The saliva in Ace's mouth suddenly secreted vigorously. Index finger moves. It is indeed the #1 signature dish in Gaia. Ace picked up the chopsticks on the tablecloth, reached out and gently picked up a small piece of cheek meat under the fish's eyes, dipped it in the soup, and put it in his mouth. Sigh, Ace gasped, and the fish melted in his mouth, extremely tender. What's even more amazing is that the fresh and tender fish meat is like popping candy, bouncing continuously in Ace's mouth, slightly stimulating his taste buds. Cool. After Ace swallowed the fish, he couldn't help shouting. The guests around were not surprised when they saw it. Instead, they looked at each other and smiled, as if they had seen this scene too much. Ace used to be not refined when eating, but this time when he encountered such a delicious food, he exposed his true nature. He picked up a bowl of rice, and started to eat the jumping fish. Fish with rice, exciting. After eating and drinking, Ace began to wander along the central avenue of Gaia City. Obviously, there is no such mysterious organization as urban management in the kingdom of Gaia, so the streets are full of vendors setting up stalls. Ace stopped and walked, and suddenly stopped in front of a hawker stall selling hats. Handsome guy. Do you have anything you want? The peddler is a middle-aged uncle. Seeing Ace stop, he immediately started to sell desperately. All the hats here are designed by professional designers. Good quality and low price. Don't miss it when you pass by. Ace didn't listen to him. His eyes were firmly attracted by a certain orange hat. I saw that this hat has two emoticon decorations of smiling face and crying face, and there is a skull brand tied with a rope under the hat. It is the hat that Ace always wears in the anime. Is this fate? Ace laughed, and the freckles on his face seemed to be cheering. He pointed to the hat and asked, "Boss, how do you sell this hat?" The hawker's eyes are bright. There is a show. As an old fritter who has been in society for many years, he saw Ace's love for this hat at a glance, so when he gritted his teeth, the lion opened his mouth and said, 10,000 Baileys. Old Grandit, are you crazy? You bought this hat for only 10,000 berries, and you dare to sell it for 100,000. The stall owner next to him kept fighting with him, so he immediately broke the stage. That's right. Only a fool would buy it. A profiteer. A passerby also interjected. But Grandit ignored them at all, still staring at Ace. He believed in his own judgment. It's just that the sweat streaming down his forehead shows that Grandit's heart is not peaceful. Is it Grandit? Ace had a strange expression on his face. This temperament of a profiteer really fits the name. But Ace really didn't care about the money, and he didn't bother to bargain, so he smiled and said, I bought it. What? At this moment, Grandit cried out in surprise, and was immediately overjoyed. Why, you're not selling it anymore. Ace joked, seeing Grandit's expression and feeling a little amused. Sell, of course sell. The money earned from this order can catch up with the previous month, and Grandit immediately planned to help Ace pack it. Wait. I offer. But at this moment, a young man wearing a green shirt and black overalls suddenly came from the other side of the street. The strangest thing was that this sentence seemed to come from the mouth of the pigeon on his shoulder. What? This time, Grandit was not the only one who was shocked. What is it today? Fools get together. Ace also raised his eyebrows, and followed the voice to look over. Rob Lucci? Seeing the iconic pigeon on the boy's shoulder, Ace called out his name at once. And Lucci was called out by Ace's name, and his pupils shrank suddenly. As a member of CP9, he has been performing latent missions all year round. For most people, his real identity is an absolute secret, but today he was directly broken. You know me? Rob Lucci asked directly, not even thinking about using ventriloquist. Oh. You don't care about this. Tell me, why are you bothering me? Ace said with a sneer. An espionage organization like CP9 pays attention to lurking, and will never seek trouble with a stranger for no reason. So just now Lucci came to pick things up on purpose. It must have received some mission, and it was aimed at him. Seeing that his purpose had been exposed, Lucci didn't want to make any more detours, so he said bluntly, I won't kill you, you just need to be punched by me obediently and lie in the hospital for a few months. Haha. Ace laughed outright, as unreasonable as ever. What if I refuse? Then I guess I might not be able to control the weight in my hand. If you accidentally cripple your limbs, it will be bad. Lucci narrowed his eyes slightly, his tone full of confidence in his own strength, and contempt for Ace. Two gentlemen, do you still want to buy it? At this time, Grandit's voice came in at an untimely moment, interrupting the conversation between the two. At this time, Ace also suddenly thought that Rob Lucci was in Gaia at this time, and he certainly wouldn't be specifically to deal with him. If he did it in public, his real mission would probably be ruined. So Ace said jokingly to him, I said Lucci, I don't think you want to do it here, you want me to fight with you, it's not impossible. Lucci hesitated, and could only reply, HMPH, say it. Didn't you just want to buy a hat? It's very simple, you pay for me, and I'll go with you. Ace felt more at ease when he saw the devastated expression on Lucci's face. And Lucci was really upset, but he could only snort coldly, and dumped Bailey's to Grandit's booth. Hey, sir, I'm sorry, what you just said was not enough. Grandit's old face had already turned into a chrysanthemum with a smile, but what he said made Lucci tremble. Obviously, the raging anger has been ignited in my heart. What? Mr. Lucci didn't bring enough money. Ace stepped in at the right time. Click, click. Suddenly, a circle of cobweb-like cracks opened on the bluestone road under Lucci's feet. Take it. Lucci almost squeezed the words out of his teeth, threw 10,000 Baileys down, and headed out of the city first. And Ace let out a hearty laugh, put on his hat, and followed at the same speed. When Grandit saw the two people disappearing at the end of the street in an instant, he was terrified and sweated profusely. These two people turned out to be such strong men? Just now he blackmailed the two of them. Grandit didn't dare to stay where he was anymore. He rolled up the booth, took the money and ran away. At this moment, Ace and Lu Qi have already left the city and came to a deserted beach. Da. Lu Qi's flying figure stopped abruptly, his feet landed on the ground, and he turned to face Ace, who was following him. "You're quite courageous. I'm a little impressed. You actually dared to follow." Lu Qi waved his hand, causing the pigeon on his shoulder to fly to a tree beside him, and said with a sneer, "But don't expect me to be your subordinate. Show mercy." Ace has now landed firmly on the opposite side of Lu Qi, and when he heard this, he just shrugged indifferently. He is now immune to Lu Qi's daily attire, and the corner of his mouth is slanted. "Why didn't I dare to come? I just want you to test the results of my hard work for more than 4 months." Crazy. Seeing that Ace still wanted to use himself as a sharpening stone, Lu Qi didn't want to say any more, and rushed directly to Ace with a low shout. In an instant, he rushed to Ace, raised his right hand suddenly, and stretched out his index finger, as if releasing a layer of black metallic luster. Finger gun. Lu Qi's finger was like a bullet, broke through the speed of sound, and shot directly at Ace, but at this moment, he heard the same move name from Ace's mouth. Finger gun. Ping. Lu Qi's finger and Ace's finger gun collided together. It was clearly 2 fingers, but there was a sound of metal clashing. "And? You can also point a gun." Lu Qi was blocked, showing a look of surprise. "Then why don't you try this move?" Land feet. Lu Qi jumped up, then spun, and kicked his right foot in an arc in the air. A crescent-shaped cyan sword energy pierced the air and slashed towards Ace. Land feet. But Ace was unhurried, and kicked out with the same kick. A huge sword energy twice as large as Lu Qi flew up from bottom to top. Under Lu Qi's shocked eyes, he first split his legs, and then he slashed at Lu Qi, who was in the air without slowing down at all. Moonstep. Lu Qi kicked to the left, and with the counter-shock force of the air shield, he moved his body several meters to the right, and then avoided Ace's land's feet. The sharp sword aura was undecided. It charged high into the sky, split several white clouds, and then slowly dissipated. "Are you at this level?" Ace smiled provocatively. "That's it, you still want to teach me a lesson? Just dream." Ha 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 ha. Lu Qi laughed back angrily, with a fierce expression on his face. "I admit, you have successfully angered me. Do you think that you will be invincible after mastering the 6 moves? I will teach you today. What is it? It's the real 6 styles." As soon as Lu Qi finished speaking, he let out a deep beast roar. The figure, which was already about 1.9 meters, slowly grew bigger at this moment, and after a while, it swelled into a monster of more than 3 meters. Its body changed into a leopard shape, and a powerful leopard tail grew behind it. Mao fruit. Leopard shape. Seeing Lu Qi's change, Ace didn't show the slightest surprised expression on his face, as if he knew it a long time ago. Facing Ace's reaction, Lu Qi's expression became more serious. This feeling that everything about him is controlled by the other party is really not comfortable. Razor. If you don't understand, then use absolute strength to destroy the opponent. After Lu Qi let out a low growl, he exerted force on his feet and rushed towards Ace at a high speed. His feet cut through the traces formed by the air, leaving a sharp track in the air. Faced with this move, Ace didn't hold back. His right hand was covered with a layer of black-armed domineering, and he greeted it. Base. Lu Qi's figure flashed past Ace, and the sharp marks under his feet collided with Ace's right hand without fancy. Suddenly sparks splashed. At this moment, Lu Qi had already flashed behind Ace, and his body spun rapidly. Land foot, leopard tail. The tail behind Lu Qi collapsed straight, and unexpectedly cut a spiral slash, cutting the air hissing, and slashed towards Ace's waist. And Ace was dazzled by Lu Qi's moves at the moment, but he was so happy in his heart. The razor is the fusion technique of shaving, and moonstep in the 6 styles, and the leopard tail is the advanced use of lanjiao. 6 forms really has great potential for development. Facing the sword energy that had been cut in front of him, Ace saw that Lai Xin was happy, and instead of avoiding it, he called out the move he had just thought of. Reactive armor. As soon as the words fell, the sword energy had already struck Ace's abdomen, but the imagined scene of blood splattering did not appear at all. Ace's abdomen became as hard as iron, and sparks flew everywhere where he collided with the sword energy, but he couldn't break through his defense at all. When Lu Qi saw this scene, his pupils shrank, but he didn't stop attacking, but rushed to Ace. Return life. Finger gun, Madara. Lu Qi's original 3-meter high body suddenly changed to 1.9 meters. Although his figure became smaller, his speed had a qualitative change. His hands left countless afterimages in front of Ace, like Gatling running at high speed, pointing a gun attacked all parts of Ace's body. But Ace still didn't move, and even closed his eyes with a smile. Clang clang. Lu Qi's finger gun hit Ace's body, but it seemed to hit the hardest steel. If you look carefully, you will find that every second before Lu Qi's finger lands on Ace, a small black defensive surface will appear at the point where it landed, blocking the finger gun. Da. Seeing that his attack had no effect at all, Lu Qi turned over and landed a few meters away, his face so gloomy that it seemed as if water would drip out. On Ace's body, the original clothes had become rags, and when the wind blows at this moment, his muscular muscles are exposed. Haha, it's exactly what I thought. Ace adjusted his hat, feeling a little excited at the moment. The so-called reactive armor is a fusion technique that combines iron block and finger painting, and first relies on the body's instinctive reaction of finger painting to feel the attack. At the moment before the attack comes, just use the iron block instinctively in the small area where the attack lands to block the enemy's moves. In this way, the attack that originally needed to use the whole body of iron and consume 2% of the strength can be done now with less than 1% of the strength. Definitely the best move for a protracted battle. And the creation of this trick is just the beginning. In the future, Ace can also rely on the development of the 6 styles to obtain more powerful moves. Okay, I've got what I want. Thank you for being a sparring partner today. Ace showed a harmless smile. Be careful, next. I'm going to be serious. Shave. As soon as the voice fell, the next second, Ace suddenly appeared beside Lu Qi, with purple flames dancing faintly on his toes. Land's foot stacking flame slash. This time, the sword Qi pierced by the toes was 10 meters long, filled with purple flames, and the scorching temperature caused Lu Qi's face to change drastically. In a hurry, he could only sip in a low voice, Lanjiao Kai Bird. This Kai Bird move is already the strongest Lanjiao that Lu Qi can use. A cyan bird-shaped sword energy instantly collided with Ace's flame slash. Boom. There was a loud noise, which was heard by half of the island, and Grandit, who was rushing home in the city of Gaia, froze even more. Isn't that direction the place where those 2 people disappeared just now? I actually blackmailed such a terrifying powerhouse? Grandit, sweating profusely, walked even faster. Puff. Call. The 2 haze feet offset each other, but the purple flame exploded, covering Lu Qi's figure. After a blast of air, Lu Qi rushed out with a look of embarrassment. The hair on his body was scorched black by the flames. Puff. Lu Qi couldn't help spitting out a mouthful of blood, gasped, and said angrily, "Damn it. Today I will let you experience the strongest moves of the person who has practiced the 6 moves to the extreme." 6 forms of mystery. As soon as the words fell, Lu Qi disappeared in the same place in an instant, and appeared in front of Ace almost at the same time, with both hands clenched into fists, palms facing Ace's abdomen. 6 King Spear. Puff. Hum. Suddenly, a powerful shockwave shot out from Lu Qi's fist, and hit Ace's abdomen directly, and then came out through the body. A circle of cylindrical airwaves impacted horizontally into the distance, plowing a gully tens of meters long on the beach. Da. Ace bent over and took a few steps back, his brows were deeply frowned, and a trace of blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. It seems that we can't underestimate any enemy. Although Ace covered his abdomen with armed colors, he still felt a sharp pain. After all, this is a terrifying move equivalent to Sky Island Shockbee. He straightened his body again, moved his limbs, and made a clicking sound. Lu Qi's expression can only be described as shocking. His blow just now is comparable to the full blow of a top major general. How could this kid who was younger than me be able to resist? 6 King Spear? Ace smiled slightly, I'll accept this move. After saying this, in Lu Qi's eyes, Ace suddenly disappeared, and then appeared in front of Lu Qi in an instant. 6 Forms Mysteries, 6 King Spear Flame. With the same movement, the shockwave from Ace's hands blasted out from Lu Qi's chest with a rich purple flame. The flame plowed a ravine behind him, and the sand in the ravine turned into clusters of crystals under the high temperature of the flame. Under this move, Lu Qi's body was thrown high, the whites of his eyes had been rolled out, and he sprayed blood and landed on the ground in the distance. Before he passed out, he was already terrified in his heart. What a powerful talent this child named Ace possessed. He actually learned his own moves in an instant? Woo! Ace stopped his work and stood up, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and used this move directly without urging the Spirit Fire Pure Body Art, which was a bit reluctant. And Lu Qi's pigeon also flew down at this moment and landed beside Lu Qi, cooing a bit sadly. Ace thought for a while, but stretched out his hand and took back the purple fire remaining in Lu Qi's body, muttering to himself, "This time, I will spare your life and leave you to my stupid brother Lu Fei." When mentioning Luffy, Ace couldn't help laughing when he thought of how he trusted himself unconditionally. Then he shook his head and flew towards Gaia City again. And after he walked away, beside the fainted Lu Qi, there was a sudden toothache creaking sound in the air. Immediately afterwards, a door opened out of nowhere in the air. A strong man with hair combed into two horns came out from the door. Is it Bruno? Lu Qi has regained consciousness at this time, but his body is still unable to move. Are you, on behalf of the organization, to deal with me? Ah, Bruno, who is the owner of the door fruit in CP9, sighed at this moment and said, we grew up together, don't you know me? How could I attack you? Let's go. This mission has been considered a failure. This kid named Ace is no longer something we can deal with. After speaking, Bruno picked up Lu Qi, turned around and walked into the air door and disappeared in place. After returning to the city, Ace began to inquire about the auction. A month passed quickly. During this period, Ace found out that the venue of the auction was actually in the palace. This is not good news for the Gaia Kingdom. According to the information, PM the next day is the official time for the auction. Ace received the news that Zephyr and others will arrive this evening. According to the phone call Zephyr made to him a few days ago, in this operation, a Brigadier General of the North Sea will lead 500 sailors to cooperate with them to prevent criminals from escaping in the chaos, and this Brigadier General has already arrived at the outskirts of the Gaia Kingdom Sea area. At this moment, Ace walked along the central avenue again, towards the direction of the palace. He wants to take advantage of the last night to step on a spot in the palace to observe the true strength of this so-called playing card. But at an intersection in front of Ace, there was a large circle of people around at this time, pointing at the few people in the middle of the circle. Hey haha, brat. A gangster in a leather jacket with studs all over his body, with a vicious smile on his face, kicked a child lying on the ground with his leather boots. The child was already covered in blood, his face was bruised and purple, and blood was continuously flowing from the corner of his mouth. He moaned in pain, but what he got in return was a more hearty laugh from the gangsters around him. This is too much. The women onlookers showed a look of unbearable. That's right, it was just a bump. If this continues, the child will die, someone said angrily. But immediately someone covered their mouths and whispered. Shut up. Don't you see the playing card logo on their chests? They are all playing card people, don't you want to live? As soon as these words came out, all the people around showed a look of fear and took a step back involuntarily. This playing card, in the past year, has covered the sky with one hand in the kingdom of Gaia. At the outermost edge of the crowd, a small figure shrouded in a robe saw all of this. He wanted to make a move a few times, but he endured it. Finally, he sighed deeply and turned around to face the other party. Go to the alley in the distance. When the figure turned around, a corner of a striped hat peeked out from between the robes. This figure was Trafalgar Law, who was studying medicine in the hospital. He already had the power of the fruit of the operation, and he could completely save the child lying on the ground, but once he made a move, he would risk being discovered by the Don Quixote family again. After some weighing, Luo chose to protect himself. But before taking 2 steps, Luo suddenly noticed that a child who was about his own age flashed past him and headed straight for the center of the crowd. The orange hat on this man's head is extremely conspicuous. What? How did this happen? In Luo's eyes, this child who appeared suddenly was like walking in a courtyard. His figure flickered a few times, and his speed was too fast for people to see clearly, and he slipped through the impenetrable crowd in the blink of an eye. This made him dumbfounded, how much he had to know about the surrounding environment to do it. Hey, smelly brat, what do you want to do? If you don't want to lie on the ground like him, it's best not to interfere. The gangsters laughed together, as if something happy had happened. At this time, someone from outside the crowd suddenly squeezed in. Everyone, let me go. This person's fiery red hair is particularly conspicuous. He is Willie, who has been looking for Bath's whereabouts in the city for more than a month. At this time, when he heard someone calling for help, he didn't forget his duty as a city guard, so he wanted to go in and help with a knife on his waist. When he finally squeezed into the crowd, he saw a group of gangsters surrounding a child wearing an orange hat. Huh. What are you talking about, little bastard? The gangster asked Ace with a mohawk hairstyle and raised his head high, with a look of disdain. I'll say it again, get out. Ace put his hands in his trouser pockets, protecting the injured child on the ground, and said in a deep voice. Willie's face changed when he heard this. These gangsters are not good-tempered guys. Worse. Sure enough, the gangster shook his fist at Ace without saying a word. Are you courting death? You. But only halfway through his words, his fist was still in the air, and he flew out at a faster speed. With a plop, he fell to the ground, and his personnel were unknown. As for the surrounding onlookers, almost no one saw Ace make a move, and even Ace's hands were still in his trouser pockets. The remaining gangsters originally wanted to go forward together and take a few kicks, but at this moment their bodies froze and they didn't dare to move at all, for fear that they would be the next one to fall to the ground. Among the crowd, Luo, who came back again, couldn't help letting out a low cry this time, his eyes widened in shock. At that moment, this boy who was the same age as him stretched out and retracted his legs in one go, even he could barely see an afterimage. How? Are you still fighting? Ace looked around, and the remaining gangsters immediately panicked. Monster. He's a monster. The gangsters fled in all directions, and even the leader who was lying on the ground ignored him. At this time, Willie also ran over, and immediately squatted beside the injured child. Are you all right? Take heart. Willie briefly checked the child's body, and then exhaled. Fortunately, the bones are not broken. Is there a doctor around? Willie stood up with the child in his arms and shouted to the crowd around him. After a while, a middle-aged man finally ran over, gritted his teeth. I'm a doctor, show me the child. After a brief treatment of the wound, the doctor said to Willie, there is no problem for now, leave the child to me, and I will take him to the hospital. Willie carefully placed the baby in the doctor's arms, and immediately looked up to find Ace. But it was found that people spontaneously gave way to Ace. At this time, Ace had his hands in his pockets and walked farther and farther. Ace pushed his hat down and walked through a few alleys, trying to stay as far away from the incident as possible. He came here with a mission this time. Although he couldn't help but save the child, he still had to act one day later, and he didn't want to cause more trouble. After walking for a while, Ace found someone following him all the time, and after turning a corner again, a shout came from behind. Excuse me, please wait. Willie gasped heavily and ran over. Ace frowned and turned to look at Willie. What's the matter with you? Seeing that it was the red-haired boy who helped the child just now, Ace's face looked a lot better. You are? Willie immediately stopped in his tracks and replied respectfully. My name is Willie, and I am a soldier of my country's city guard. Thank you for saving that child and doing the work that should have been done by us. After speaking, Willie bowed to Ace. It's okay, it's a small matter. Ace smiled and said, if it's okay, then I'll go first. Wait a minute, please. Willie suddenly raised his head, and called out to Ace eagerly, if it's possible, can you please give me the trick just now? What does that mean? Ace turned his head and raised his eyebrows. I have been working hard to become stronger. I was overwhelmed by your strength after seeing you make a move just now, so I hope you can give me some of your moves, even a little bit. Willie said in a tone it's full of sincerity. And Ace turned around again, staring into Willie's eyes. After feeling the persistence in Willie's eyes, Ace let out a breath and took a few steps forward. Then, first, hold out your hands. Ace moved closer to Willie. After hearing what Ace said, Willie immediately raised his hands without hesitation. Willie's hands were full of calluses left over from years of continuous exercise, layer after layer, making his hands look unusually thick. Thick, hard, and indeed a pair of good fighter's hands, Ace affirmed Willie. From these hands, Ace seemed to be able to see that Willie was training hard day after day. No, I'm just one of the lowest level soldiers, Willie said with some embarrassment. Don't be modest, for a fighter, you can see the true character of this person from his hands. Ace also laughed, to be honest, I have a good impression of you. After all, let's not mention Willie's strength, but he has the persistent character that a top powerhouse must have. Let me ask you another question. Why do you want to become stronger? Ace restrained his smile and asked a little seriously. Hearing this, Willie obviously froze and fell into thinking. Just now you said that you want me to teach you moves, and I have already agreed, but I still want to know why you are so thirsty for power? Ace's voice reached Willie's ears, and Willie lowered his head into memory. Buzz's serious and kind expression kept pouring into his mind. After taking a deep breath, Willie recounted. 10 years ago, I was just an orphan living on the street. I don't remember what my parents looked like. I only know that I was abandoned on the street. I also don't hate them. After all, they must have their own difficulties. But that year, it snowed heavily in the city, but I only had a simple robe. I thought I was going to die this time. Having said that, Willie smiled sincerely. However, Master Sergeant Bass of the city guards rescued me. He brought me up. I trained hard and vowed to repay his kindness. But Willie's expression became painful again. However, you don't have the talent of a fighter. Although you have tried your best, you still can't exceed your limit. Ashton paused, am I right? Willie was startled, but nodded with difficulty. However, I can give you strength. Ace's words caused Willie to raise his head suddenly, with an unbelievable expression on his face. But you might die. Looking at Ace's solemn expression, Willie couldn't help swallowing. Everything depends on your heart. If you really have something important in your heart as you said, then you can definitely persevere. Ace waited for his reply. Willie carefully understood Ace's words, and then his eyes became firm. I've made up my mind. Do you have the confidence that you won't die? Ace asked. Willie shook his head, but Ace had a smile on his face. Even though he knew that he was about to face death, he still had the courage to move forward. Maybe this young man named Willie wanted to find someone by himself. Then let's do the first training here. Ace will have to do the last test. Pick up your weapon, and the next step will begin. Yes. Hearing Ace's order, Willie pulled out the katana sword at his waist without hesitation, and with his feet slightly apart, he pointed the tip of the knife at Ace. Then, I'm going. Ace's expression became serious. He took his hands out of his trouser pockets, and straightened his back. You must stay conscious. As soon as he finished speaking, Ace's pupils suddenly dilated, and then a circle of blue-black air mass swept across in the direction of Willie in a fan shape with him as the center. In Willie's eyes, Ace's figure in front of him seemed to be magnified tens of millions of times in an instant, becoming an indomitable giant. The terrifying aura made Willie's body feel like chaff, and his feet trembled. But even though fear kept surging in his heart and dizziness kept appearing in his mind, Willie still gritted his teeth and straightened his back. The air mass swept across the end of the street, and Luo, who was hiding at the corner, was also suppressed by Ace. His face suddenly turned purple, and he cried out in surprise. How is it possible? This is Overlord-like domineering. After all, Luo had stayed in the Don Quixote family and had a deep understanding of the world's power system. But Willie is just a small soldier in the Gaia kingdom, and before this momentum, he has almost reached his limit. Is this the only way to say that I want to become stronger? Ace's tone became cold and bloodthirsty at the moment. This is just a preparation for exercise. Then, you can die. As soon as the words fell, Ace swung his fist at Willie, and the wind caused his red hair to be messed up. In Willie's eyes, this punch on him would definitely kill him suddenly. Dodge? Strong fear made this idea appear in his mind. But in the next moment, the face of Sergeant Major Bass rushed into his mind again. Sergeant Major Bass still doesn't know whether he is alive or dead, so he will always be a weak person like this. No. I want to become stronger. The strong belief dispelled Willie's fear, and he even took a step forward, raising the knife in his hand high. Call out. Ace's fist brushed past Willie's face, scratching his cheek sorely, but the terrifying pressure receded like a tide in an instant. Willie's legs were trembling constantly, he was panting heavily, sweat poured down his face, and he knelt down on the ground with a plop. But he didn't faint in the end. Congratulations. At this moment, Ace's voice came into Willie's ears with a hint of a smile. How does it feel to overcome the fear of death? Ace is now more and more satisfied with Willie. People with strength below the school level should have rolled their eyes and fainted when they encountered their domineering arrogance. But Willie actually held back with his strong willpower. It seems that his few ground fire lotus seeds have a place to go. As long as Willie swallows a ground fire lotus seed, he can have half of his strength in an instant, and seeing Willie's perseverance, Ace came up with the idea of letting him take 2 ground fire lotus seeds. I don't know. What will be the effect then? Take the liberty to ask. Exactly. Who are you, exactly are? Willie still can't believe that the monstrous aura just now came from this child who is younger than himself. Haha. You don't need to worry about my identity, you just need to know that my name is Ace. Ace helped Willie up, and continued. You have passed my test, I can give you great strength, but please tell me. Willie understood that in this world, there is no such thing as a sky, and the other party must have his own conditions. After I hand over the power to you, you have to be loyal to me and leave Gaia with me. After Ace said these words, Willie, who had always been extremely firm, hesitated. After leaving Gaia, how can I repay Lord Bass? You don't need to rush to answer, I can give you a day to think about it. Ace didn't immediately force Willie to give an answer. Willie's hesitation is the best way to explain his character. If he agrees, Ace will turn around and leave. The kind of villain who can forget his benefactor as soon as he turns around is not worthy of being his partner. Just when Ace was about to give Willie the next step, a figure shrouded in a robe suddenly rushed out from the corner. Wait. Luo panted heavily, his body drenched in sweat. Willie glanced at Luo who suddenly appeared, and asked Ace cautiously, do you know him? Ace saw Luo who suddenly appeared, but there was no surprise in his eyes. Obviously, with his knowledge, domineering level, he had already discovered that someone was hiding in that corner. But when the other party lifted the robe to reveal the iconic spotted hat, Ace still showed a hint of surprise. First of all, my name is Trafalgar Luo, a doctor. Luo walked in front of the two. I'm very sorry to disturb you. Death surgeon. Ace murmured in a low voice, with his mouth tilted up, today's harvest is really not small. What did you say? Luo obviously hasn't won that title yet, so he doesn't understand what ace means. What's the matter with you? Ace didn't answer, but asked instead. He was very curious about Luo's purpose. But Luo turned his attention to Willy, and he asked with a complicated expression. Why? Why can you stand still under such arrogance? I want to ask you, that's obviously beyond the range that ordinary people can bear. Luo's face was filled with fear again. I'm ashamed to say, if I hadn't been leaning against the wall just now, I would have fallen to the ground. But you are different, you can bear it. Why can you do such a powerful thing? I don't know. Willy lowered his head slightly, but maybe it's because I'm thinking of my benefactor in my heart. Benefactor. Yes, it was Lord Bath who saved my life. I gritted my teeth and endured it when I thought of repaying him. Willy's words at this time were full of affirmation. This shows that Willy's loyalty is above fear. Don't underestimate the power of human belief, Ace added. Is that so? There seemed to be a hint of pain in Luo's eyes, and the figure of Klassen appeared in his mind. Benefactor. I have one too. Immediately, his eyes suddenly became firm. He turned to face Ace, and bowed deeply to 90 degrees, please teach me too. Luo didn't say this impulsively. He also wanted to repay his benefactor, Klassen. But a year ago, Klassen was killed by Doflamingo in order to save him, so he wants the Don Quixote family, especially Doflamingo, to pay the price. But even though he had obtained the fruit of the operation a year ago and developed some abilities over the past year, when he thought of the powerful strength of the Don Quixote family, Luo could only feel powerless for a while. What year and month will I have to wait before I can take revenge? And Willy's behavior gave Luo a little inspiration. Maybe the boy named Ace in front of him will surprise him. If you want me to help you improve your strength instantly, then I'm sorry, I can't do it. But Ace's answer was completely beyond Luo's expectations. Luo glanced at Willy and asked anxiously, but you just clearly. You are different from Willy. Ace shook his head and continued. Willy is like a blank sheet of paper now, he can follow the path I gave him, but you. Ace paused when he said this, with a deep light in his eyes. If I guessed correctly, you have already eaten the fruit of the operation by now. When Luo heard Ace's words, his face changed drastically, and he took several steps back. Few people know about the fact that he ate the fruits of the surgery. How did the child in front of me know? You don't have to be afraid, I won't do you any harm. What I want to say is that you already have your own path to follow, so I can only give you some suggestions so that you can avoid some detours. If you just mention some suggestions, moves developed by Luo 10 years later, are all in Ace's mind now. After Luo calmed down, he also understood that if Ace wanted to harm him, there was no need to talk nonsense with him here. So his attitude became respectful again, and he bowed again. Please advise me. Haha, don't be so respectful, I'm 4 years younger than you. Ace said with a smile. Also, let's talk about those words next time, there are many guests around us now. When Luo heard Ace's words, his heart was shocked, and he followed Ace's gaze. Sure enough, at both ends of the alley, there were already 5 or 6 men in black robes with knives blocking the intersection. Willy pulled out the katana from his waist and said to Ace, although it may hinder you, please let me fight together. As a member of the city guard, it is also my duty to protect the safety of the people. Then, I'll help too. Luo took out a dagger from his pocket. Haha, okay. The 6 people in front of the alley will be handed over to me, and the 5 people in the back can be handed over to you. Ace said with a smile. Okay. Luo and Willy agreed in unison. While talking, Ace had already walked towards the entrance of the alley, getting closer and closer to those people. And Luo and Willy also turned their backs to Ace and walked towards the end of the alley. The men in black robes at the entrance of the alley saw that the two dared to turn their backs on them. Their eyes lit up immediately, and they threw several throwing knives at Luo and Willy. Call out. Shish. The speed of the flying knife was extremely fast, as if it would be inserted into the backs of the two of them in the next second. Swish. Ding ding ding. Ace's hands left an afterimage in the air, and none of the throwing knives could pass by his side, and he took them all empty-handed. This is really powerful. Willy was attracted by the voice, turned his head to see this scene, and was shocked and speechless. Luo also caught a glimpse of this scene, and nodded in agreement. Well, if you say that Master Ace is the strongest in this country, I will believe it. Is it stronger than Lord Bass? In Willy's mind, Bass was already extremely powerful. If you're talking about the Sergeant Major of this country, I think so. Luo nodded, then clenched his dagger tightly. Okay, the 2 on the right will be handed over to you, and the 3 on the left will be handed over to me. Is it okay? Willy nodded in agreement, and both of them chose their enemies and rushed over. On the other side, Ace walked slowly to the middle of the 6 men in black robes, and stood there casually. Let's go up together. Several men in black robes looked at each other. Seeing that the kid in front of him was so arrogant, they all sneered, and at the same time strode forward, swiping their knives and slashed at the top of Ace's head. Go to hell. Bang bang bang. Bang bang bang. 6 muffled sounds sounded at the same time, and then the knives in the hands of the 6 people fell to the ground with a clang, and their bodies all flew upside down, spouting blood, and fell to the ground, with less air intake and more air output. Obviously they were all dead. Ace stood there all the time, as if he hadn't made a move at all. He still had time to turn his head and look at the 2 people at the end of the alley. Unknowingly, Ace is no longer a master who can be dealt with only by numbers. In fact, the strength of these few people is not weak, at least they all have the strength of ordinary sailors. Therefore, the battle between Willy and the 2 black-robed men seemed a bit difficult. Both of them were slightly weaker than Willy, but with the joint efforts at this moment, it was Willy who fell into the disadvantage. Don't be afraid when fighting. Courage is the most important emotion of a warrior. Ace's words came over at this time. After hearing this, Willy seemed to have made up his mind. If I die in battle, please help me tell Lord Bath that I have fought bravely. After saying this, Willy gave up his defense and rushed towards one of them, jumping up high. Cut. Puff. Because he didn't expect Willy to be so desperate, the man didn't react at all, and was directly cut into the neck with a knife. Immediately afterwards, feeling the chill behind him, Willy's body didn't stop, and he rolled forward, avoiding the other person's samurai sword. Tease. The knife in his hand swung backwards, cutting across the man's lower abdomen from bottom to top. Ah! After a scream, the man also fell into a pool of blood. Beautiful. Ace had already walked over. Although Willy was panting heavily, after dealing with 2 enemies alone, he still smiled with a sense of accomplishment. On the other side, Luo's battle has also ended. The heads of the 3 men in black had all been separated, but what surprised Willy was that the heads of the 3 men were still screaming. Rolling around on the ground, I don't know how scary it is. Haha, don't be afraid, this is Luo's devil fruit ability. Ace patted Willy on the shoulder and said, let's go, leave a few alive, go and see what their purpose is. Devil fruit? Willy couldn't help feeling odd towards Luo Yi. Ace was on the sidelines and witnessed the whole process. Facing the 3 men in black robes before, Luo raised his hand and yelled softly, room. Then a circle of cyan light with a diameter of about 3 meters surrounded them, and then Luo rushed over, swung the dagger 3 times in a row, and chopped off their heads. It's just that after the aperture disappeared, Luo's face became a little pale. Obviously, using the fruit of the operation would consume a lot of his physical strength, and he is only a 15-year-old boy now, and he has almost reached his limit in a short while. Puff puff. After Ace walked over, he raised his hand and directly took the lives of 2 of them. These people are here to kill him, and Ace will not soften his heart in the slightest. It's just that his behavior fell into the eyes of the last man in black, and he was even crueler than a demon. Now. Can you tell me your identities and purpose? Ace smiled as kindly as possible. The man in black was scared to pee. Is it playing cards again? Ace is becoming more and more curious about this organization now. Playing cards. Not only did it secretly control the entire Gaia kingdom within 2 or 3 years, but it also has the ability to send notifications to the entire world. This organization is definitely more terrifying than it appears on the surface. It's just that they turned their minds on themselves this time, so don't blame him for being ruthless. I've made up my mind. Let's play this playing card. For a while now. Ace's face showed a cold killing intent. Can I help too? Luo immediately stepped forward. Me too. Willy clenched the knife in his hand. Luo should be able to do it, but for you, Willy, it's really dangerous. Ace's evaluation is very fair. Luo has the fruit of the operation, at least he can protect himself in fierce battles. Although Ace admires Willy very much, he is not yet at the school level after all, and he is easily besieged to death. Lord Bass dealt with playing cards alone a month and a half ago, and he has lost news since then. If I turn a blind eye because of danger, then I will definitely regret it for the rest of my life. For more than a month, Willy has been worrying about Bass all the time, but the headquarters of playing cards seems to have disappeared all of a sudden. No matter how hard he looks, he can't find it. So after hearing Ace's tone, he knew the current position of the playing card, so Willy would never let this opportunity pass by. It seems that you have made up your mind. Ace stared at Willy's expression. As long as he hesitated, Ace would not agree. Yes. Willy nodded firmly. I understand, then I won't say anything more. Ace laughed. You two, please help me. Yes. The 2 replied in unison. Then Ace told the 2 of the news he knew. When Willy heard that playing cards was going to hold an underground auction in Gaia, his eyes widened. When the location was the palace, his mood can only be described as shock. Has the kingdom of Gaia already existed in name only? Willie muttered to himself sadly, after all, this is where he grew up. There was no time for him to grieve. Ace led the two quickly to the outside of the palace wall, and then carried the two of them and jumped over the 5-meter-high wall like walking on the ground. As soon as he entered the palace and saw the scene inside, the last trace of luck in Willie's heart disappeared. The guards and maids of the original palace have all disappeared, and members of Playing Cards are walking around everywhere, busy making the final arrangements for the auction venue. The three of Ace hid in a shadow and looked towards the center of the venue. At this moment, inside the auction venue, there are two people standing beside the auction table. One of them is wearing a white suit, standing respectfully aside. But the other person was sitting in front of the auction stage, wrapping his whole body tightly in a black robe, without showing a trace of his face. My lord. This is the list for this auction. The man in the suit bent down and handed a red list to the man in black, with a respectful and fearful expression on his face. The man in black didn't reach out to pick it up, but still sat quietly. The man in the suit saw that the man in the black robe was not moving, so he kept a stooped posture and did not dare to move. He felt uneasy, and a lot of cold sweat oozed from his forehead. Dormir. A few minutes later, the man in black finally spoke. His voice was low and indifferent, but his age could not be discerned. Do you know where you went wrong? Please advise, my lord. Domir bent his waist even deeper. His heart was already filled with fear, but he knew how terrible the organization's punishment for members who did wrong was. HMPH. The man in black snorted coldly. Young master gave you Playing Cards, and also gave you such an important auction. How much trust do you have in you? Yes. Yes. Domir repeatedly said yes, without daring to raise his head. Originally, after this auction, the young master will appoint you as the cadre of the family. But, the man in black robe said here, raising his head. Although Domir could not see the face of the man in black robe, he still felt I saw a piercing gaze focus on myself. You actually attracted the navy? How? How is it possible? Dormir raised his head abruptly, and said anxiously. I have already arranged for the officials of the world government. They can't send people here. Dormir understood how important this auction would be to him, so he started preparations a year ago, and even spent a lot of money to bribe important officials of the world government. They turned their backs on their promises and didn't do anything with money? Domir's face was full of anger at being deceived. Bastard. You still don't understand. The man in black yelled angrily, and continued after seeing Domir bowed his head again. Let me ask you, how is the royal family of the Gaia kingdom now? I killed them all. Domir finally realized something, and his voice became smaller and smaller. You are very good. The black-robed man laughed angrily. These world government officials hope to rely on us to force the Gaia royal family to join the world government, but they would be willing to see you, a criminal organization, kill the Orthodox kingdom and replace them instead. Dormir was sweating coldly. Over the past 2 years, the power in his hands had grown stronger and stronger. He could no longer restrain his desires, so he killed the Gaia royal family on impulse. Now calm down and think about it. The world government regards itself as orthodox. How could it be possible to cooperate with itself under such circumstances? Okay. I'll talk about your punishment later. Now quickly pack up all the auction items and follow me immediately. The man in black said in a deep voice, the auction is cancelled. Domir's face turned pale. He seemed to see his own dark future. The organization never wanted waste. Is there no other way? A former admiral of the Navy, Zephyr, brought at least 10 rear admirals to destroy you, Playing Cards. What do you think? The man in black sneered. Domir's body trembled. His strength had just reached that of an elite major general, and the Navy sent so many strong men over. In Domir's heart, there is only despair. Want to go? At this moment, a joking voice suddenly came from outside the venue, and then the three of Ace walked in. I'm curious now. The Navy's operation this time is top secret. How did you know so clearly? Ace walked to the center of the venue, his eyes fixed on the face of the man in black. It's just that the black robe was wrapped too tightly, and it was impossible to see what was inside. Who are you? Domir was already feeling desperate, but at this moment he saw 3 boys barging in again, and his heart was filled with murderous intent. You are the boss of Playing Cards. Where is Lord Base? What have you done to him? Willie couldn't bear it any longer, and didn't answer Dormir, but rushed forward to question Bass's whereabouts. Huh. Dormir hesitated at first, but then suddenly let out a burst of wild laughter. You mean that useless sergeant major? If I guessed correctly, you are Willie. That useless man kept chanting before he died. Saying your name, saying that I regret not being able to give you a peaceful and happy life. Ha 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 ha. Ridiculous. You lied to me. Lord Base will be fine. Willie's face was full of anger and ferocity, and Ace had never seen such an expression on the face of this resolute young man. I'm lying to you. I'm not so boring. Look at what it is. Domir immediately asked someone to take out a long knife, which was Buzz's saber, Ghost Cry. That trash's demon knife is not bad, so I showed mercy and threw him into the sea to feed the fish, ha 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 ha. You bastard. Willie had almost fallen into madness, drew out the knife from his waist and rushed forward. Boom. But as soon as he ran in front of Domir, he was kicked back. Puff. Willie flew upside down into Ace's arms, spewed out a mouthful of blood, and the blood mixed with tears kept falling down. The boy seemed to have become wilted all of a sudden. Not because of physical injuries, but spiritual despair. The benefactor is dead? Are you still caring about me before you die? But I can't do anything. At this moment, Willie seemed to suddenly think of something, and suddenly looked up at Ace. Master Ace, please give me strength, I want revenge. Ace was silent for a moment, and then asked, have you thought about it? After you get the power I give you, you can only obey me from now on, and as long as you open your mouth, I can take action directly to help you. Get rid of that scum. No. I want revenge by myself. Blood was dripping from the corner of Willie's mouth, but his tone at this moment was full of determination and killing intent. Okay. That's what you want. Ace felt Willie's determination, reached out to support him, and took out 2 ground fire lotus seeds. The lotus seeds are slightly green in color and crystal clear, but they emit flame-shaped rays of light, exuding a slight warmth. You take them now, it may be very painful, but you must hold back, or all previous efforts will be wasted. After Ace finished speaking, he saw that Willie had sat cross-legged, and stuffed 2 lotus seeds into his chest in the mouth. Call. As soon as the lotus seeds entered the mouth, they turned into 2 streams of blue liquid, which went down Willie's throat and rushed into his dantian. Then, it seemed to turn into a hot flame in his dantian, from the inside out. The external burning tempered Willie's body. This kind of pain is not something ordinary people can bear. After a while, blue flames even shot out from Willie's 7 orifices. After watching it from the side, Ace couldn't help but be moved. He was sure that even if he was a lieutenant general without a strong will, he would be burned into a fool by this flame. But Willie was able to hold back his teeth without even making a sound. I really didn't see the wrong person. As long as Willie can survive, maybe he can directly have the same physical strength as himself. Do you think I don't exist? Seeing the weird scene on Willie's body after Ace ate 2 lotus seeds for Willie, Domir finally couldn't help but speak at this moment. Don't talk nonsense. Are you so anxious to die? Ace didn't even lift his head. Ha ha ha. A brat who hasn't weaned himself, so arrogant. Domir laughed, walked over in a leisurely manner, and punched Ace down. Now that Domir will be punished by the organization after returning, he can't control that much anymore, and all the cruelty in his bones has come out. So what about the child? It's not like he hasn't been killed before. Iron block empty wood. Ace still didn't look up, just let out a soft drink. The next moment, Domir's fist hit Ace's back. Boom. Domir's face changed drastically. He felt the force he had thrown out, and he counterattacked back completely, and his fist immediately made a terrible bend. It was actually broken by this counter-shock force. 6 styles. You are indeed a navy. At this moment, the black-robed man in front of the auction stage finally said something, and immediately rushed to the back of the venue. HMPH. Don't even think about leaving. Shave. Seeing that the man in black robe wanted to escape, Ace immediately jumped up, appeared in front of the man in black robe, and punched him. The man in black had no choice but to punch him in the same way. Boom. In the center of the fight between the two, there seemed to be the roar of thunder and lightning, and a circle of airwaves would throw the venue into chaos. Da. Ace took 2 steps back and suffered a dark loss. He was a little surprised and said, "Are you armed and domineering?" HMPH. Don't you have it too? The man in black wrapped his robe vigorously. It was obvious that he had the upper hand in the blow just now, but he didn't dare to act rashly again. Otherwise, once his robe fell off and his identity was exposed, years of hard work have come to nothing. However, isn't that brat Luo still dead? Looks like I'm going to inform the young master this time. The man in black glanced at Luo standing in the venue, and thought to himself. Let's postpone our fight for a while, let them settle their grievances first. Ace put his hands in his trouser pockets again, and looked at Willie, who had stood up, with a gratified smile in his eyes. Willie did not disappoint himself. Ace can now feel the presence of Willie through the blue lotus seat in his body. He has completely broken through his original limit, reached the same physical strength as himself, and will improve as he improves in the future. My lord. There was a blue lotus flower mark between Willie's eyebrows at the moment, and the first thing he did when he stood up was to bow to Ace. Feeling that Willy has not become a puppet who has lost his mind and only knows to be loyal to himself, Ace is even more satisfied. Don't be too polite. That bastard is right there, go get revenge. Yes. Willy suddenly turned his head and stared at Dormer, who didn't know why, but Dormer, who was in severe pain in his right hand, felt a chill in his heart at this moment. Ha. Ha ha. It's just a brat. After saying these words again, Domir felt a little guilty for no reason. This time, Willy didn't wait for Dormer to make a move, but took the lead. The unprecedented power in his body gave him the ability to release all the anger in his heart. Whoosh. Without saying a word, Willy rushed in front of Dormir in an instant, and the blue lotus mark on his forehead lit up, and Willy's palm was covered with a thin layer of blue flame. There are really few flames, but they seem to be able to ignite the air. It turned out to be Qinglian's heartfire. After cutting off with one palm, Domir only had time to raise his left arm and barely resisted. Kai. Ah ah ah. Willy's palm wrapping Qingyan seemed to be sharper than a big sharp knife. Domir only had time to let out a scream, and his left arm fell to the ground with a puff. Puff. There was another muffled sound, and Willy's palm directly pierced Dormer's chest, stopping his screams abruptly. Thump. Willy withdrew his palm and watched Domir's body fall to the ground. 2 lines of tears flowed silently on his face. The few people in the auction venue didn't bother Willy, and Ace stared at the man in black to prevent him from making a sudden move. Willy just stood there for 10 minutes, and then, the green lotus marks on his brows lit up, and the fire flashed away, completely evaporating the tears on his face. Bending down to pick up Ghost Cry next to Domir, Willy handed it to Ace respectfully. Ace said, "This is a relic of base, and it should be handed over to you." Willy shook his head. "My vengeance has been avenged. From today on, everything about me belongs to Master Ace." Ace understood Willy's intentions, so after receiving Ghost Cry, his expression became serious. "Okay. If this is the case, I want to form a team of Yenwei, and you will be the captain of the Yenwei from now on." Having said this, Ace flipped his right hand, took out 10 more ground fire lotus seeds, and handed them to Willy. "These 10 lotus seeds will be handed over to you in the future. You can pick out 10 determined youths and distribute the lotus seeds to them one by one, officially establishing Yenwei." Willy felt Ace's trust in him, and was moved for a while. After accepting the lotus seeds, he put his legs together and responded, "Yenwei Willy, obey. Ace is in charge." At this moment, Luo, who had been silent all this time, came over, lowered the hat on his head, and looked nervous. "What's wrong?" Ace asked in confusion. "Let's go quickly." Luo first glanced at Domir's body, then glanced nervously at the man in black, urging. Ace frowned. Luo seemed to have discovered something. Ignoring Luo's urging first, Ace carefully looked at Domir's body on the ground again. Willy's palm pierced through his body just now, which has completely ended his life. At the same time, the flames also burned the suit on his upper body. And on the shoulder blade of Domir's back, there is a small white tattoo and a round skull with a grinning grin. The Don Quixote family. Ace couldn't help but read out, "This Doflamingo's hand is too long. The boss of Beihai, playing cards, is actually a member of the Don Quixote family? No wonder there is the ability to post notifications to the world." The identity of the man in black robe was about to be revealed. Ace turned around and looked at the man in black robe. His eyes became extremely dignified. "If I guessed it right, the man in black should be Virgo, the former top cadre of the Don Quixote family and now a spy in the Navy? Now it's right. No wonder the black-robed man knew the details of this operation so clearly. It is estimated that the Commodore General of the North Sea who came to cooperate with Zephyr this time is Virgo, who has been lurking in the Navy." "Hey." The black-robed man let out a sigh, and loosened the hands that wrapped his robe tightly. "It seems that I can't hide it anymore. It would be great if you could keep pretending to be stupid. Then I don't have to. Killed you all." In the end, the man in black had thrown his robe aside, and he was wearing a plaid coat, a pair of sunglasses, and lightning-shaped sideburns on both sides of his cheeks. He was looking at Ace with his hands behind his back, indifferently. "People. Wei, Ge." Luo pronounced his name word by word, his tone full of sadness and anger. 2 years ago, more than half of the responsibility for Clausen's death was due to Virgo. Although Luo knew that he was not his opponent, he still couldn't help but feel a murderous intent. "Isn't this Luo?" Virgo showed a playful smile. "After that traitor Clausen died, you disappeared. How about it? Come back to the family with me. As long as you go back, the position of the top cadre of the Red Heart Army will be yours." "Dream." Luo roared out. Of course he knew what Virgo was planning. Luo has the ability of the Fruit of Surgery, and the Fruit of Surgery is called the Ultimate Devil Fruit. Its value is unmatched by any pirate's bounty, and the transaction price exceeds 4 billion Baileys. Because as long as the capable person has enough talent and is willing to sacrifice his life, he can perform the immortality surgery that bestows eternal life on human beings. This is simply the power of God. And Dover promised himself the position of the top cadre of the Red Heart Army, which is obviously the idea, and he wants Luo to perform aging surgery for him. Ha ha ha, it's up to you. Virgo sneered, and pulled out a bamboo from behind. Then, with a buzzing sound, the armed color wrapped around his arms and the bamboo in an instant, and the bamboo immediately changed. It was pitch black, and it became a terrifying murder weapon. Ghost Bamboo Virgo. Ace understood how terrifying the power of this ordinary-looking bamboo is. 11 years later, Smoker was already a lieutenant general, but his domineering hands made of Hailu stone and covered with armed colors were still directly cut off by Virgo with a ghost bamboo. This shows that Virgo's strength at that time has surpassed the level of ordinary lieutenant generals, so what about now? At the very least, he must be a first-time lieutenant general. Is this the strongest enemy I've ever encountered? Although Ace's physical strength can barely reach that of an elite major general, he didn't have the slightest fear in his heart when facing the lieutenant general level Virgo, but a little bit of excitement. Domineeringly threw the ghost cry in his hand to Luo, and Ace laughed and said, "You will be the first person to face this weapon of mine." After finishing speaking, Ace stretched his hands behind his back and yanked forward, and then a fiery red sword appeared in his hand out of thin air. The eyes of all the people present couldn't help but be attracted by the big knife, and saw that the vermilion blade was overflowing with hot air. And smooth, flawless, the 2-inch-wide blade shone with silver light, making people afraid to look directly at it, and there were ancient exquisite patterns all over the blade's surface. Gently rubbing his fingers along the side of the blade, Ace's eyes not only showed love, but the broad-backed sword was almost completely destroyed last time. The system used special energy and different fire to upgrade it to a good and fast sword. A big change, into the domineering and awe-inspiring present. The name of the sword, Devil Demon. Ace looked at Virgo with a smile, and announced Dao's name. To be honest, Ace didn't know the meaning of the name, but the alien fire system firmly decided on the name and told him that this was the fate of this great sword. HMPH. Exorcism. It looks like a sharp knife with the highest grade, just to please the public. Virgo said disdainfully, "Look at me breaking your broken knife with this little bamboo in my hand." While speaking, Virgo has already rushed towards Ace. The bamboo in his hand is spinning rapidly, and the faster and faster speed makes it accumulate a huge centrifugal force, coupled with the hardness of the armed domineering hardened. The next blow is absolutely terrifying. Ghost Bamboo. Virgo was afraid that Zephyr and others would arrive, so he used his trump card as soon as he came up. When the rotation speed of the bamboo accelerated to the limit, Virgo also rushed in front of Ace. The bamboo in his hand draws an arc horizontally on the side of his body, and it is drawn directly between Ace's chest and abdomen. Ace is in charge. You can't take it by force. Luo's eager voice sounded. Virgo's armed color is very domineering. Virgo also heard it in his ears, but a sneer appeared on the corner of his mouth, reminding now? Late. Ace in front of him actually wanted to use that broken knife to block his ghost bamboo? Court death. Let this knife break in two. HMPH. Let me see how domineering you are. Ace suddenly shouted in his heart. Spiritual fire essence body art 4 times, break out. Armed arrogance, hardening. At this moment, facing an unprecedentedly powerful enemy at the level of a lieutenant general, Ace finally brought out all the gains from his training during this period of time. I saw that the devil demon he was holding in both hands was suddenly entangled in darkness by the armed arrogance. The 4 times the strength of his body gave him infinite strength. Facing the roaring ghost bamboo, Ace did not show any fancy slashed up with a knife. Ace didn't use the different fire. This time it was purely a duel of strength and domineering. The moment Ace's broadsword collided with Virgo's ghost bamboo, there was no sound, only a circle of invisible fluctuations scattered. Both Willie and Luo couldn't help turning pale, and their bodies kept retreating until they hit the corner of the wall, and they felt a little better. How could it be so strong? Willie had an unbelievable look on his face. After taking the ground fire lotus seeds, he had already had a mysterious connection with Ace, so he knew that the physical strength of the two was the same. But with Ace's knife, the two of them couldn't stop it. This is already the strength of a lieutenant general in the Navy. Luo couldn't help but be shocked. He could guess the strength of Virgo, but how old is Ace? But it's 4 years younger than me. Ace and Virgo's blows were obviously equal, so they broke apart at the touch of a touch, and jumped away at the same time. Puff. The auction platform next to them suddenly trembled at this moment, and turned into powder. Ace's hand holding, Devil Demon, was trembling, but his expression was extremely excited. After 4.5 months of special training, this time he finally met an opponent who could let go and fight. Come again. Ace had no intention of stopping at all, and no matter what Virgo thought, he rushed up again with the knife. Chop. 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 Ha ha ha. The pitch-black devil demon, emitting a faint red light, slashed at Virgo's head again and again, and the slashing speed was crazy, which made Virgo look a little embarrassed. Luo on the side was stunned. In fact, he had already guessed Virgo's identity at the beginning, so he urged Ace to leave. After all, he knew a little about Virgo's strength. But what is the situation now? He has never seen Ace in this state, and he actually suppressed Virgo, who has the strength of a lieutenant general. Willie, pinch me, I'll see if I'm dreaming, Luo said to Willie beside him in a daze. Oh. Willie agreed, and honestly grabbed a small piece of meat on Luo's arm, and twisted it suddenly. Sigh. Luo sucked in a breath of cold air. You really screw it up. Willie was a little dazed, and thought, didn't you ask me to twist it? The battle between the two has never stopped, it is full of no fancy head-on collisions, and the time is constantly passing. Stop. Virgo's originally straight coat had become disheveled, and he swung Ace's big knife away, and roared angrily. Ace didn't seem to hear it, and he still ignored it, fully releasing his power. Ah. Do you think I can't do anything about you? Virgo tore off his coat and threw it under the auction table. I'll let you see what the real armed color is. After taking off his coat, Virgo only had a pair of jeans left on his body, revealing a body of muscular muscles with clear lines and extremely strong. Hum. After a soft sound, the jet-black armed domineering suddenly lingered upwards, and then covered Virgo's entire body, exuding a dark light. Armed color domineering wrapped around the whole body? Although Ace already knew Virgo's strength before, he was still very shocked to see him covering his whole body with arrogance. I'll let you see how powerless you will be in the face of a domineering user who is stronger than yourself. Virgo held the ghost bamboo, and the veins on his forehead burst out. Now even if I stand here and chop it for you, what can I do? Is it? If only relying on domineering and strength, Ace admits that he really has nothing to do with Virgo. After all, this guy's armed domineering is really well used. Facing Virgo, who had raised his whole body defense, the armed arrogance in Ace's slayer slowly receded, revealing his crimson blade again. The system said before that although you are only a good sword now, but because it is refined by different fires, now you can completely withstand the different fires. Ace caressed the blade, with a smile in his eyes. This time, let me try your power. After finishing speaking, Ace raised his head abruptly, raised his hands high and, killing demons, and shouted loudly. Qinglian flame / 20 layers, call. For the first time, Qinglian's heartfire surged out unreservedly, and instantly wrapped around the blade of devil demon, covering as many as 20 layers. The body was under a huge shock force. Ace gritted his teeth, and swung down suddenly. Cut. The crimson blade, with blue flames flickering, slashed directly at Virgo. Virgo didn't expect Ace to have such a backhand at all. He hastily raised the ghost bamboo covered with arrogance, and greeted him from the bottom up. Kai. The moment the two came into contact, Virgo was horrified to find that his arrogance was only blocked for less than a second. The next moment, Zumo had already cut off his ghost bamboo, and the hot saber energy suddenly came in front of him. Iron block. Frightened, Virgo used the sixth form again, instantly concentrated his arrogance on his left arm, and blocked it. Clang. Devil demon. First blocked by Virgo's left arm, he was in a stalemate for a moment. After a few seconds, he broke through his defense in his desperate eyes. Puff. The flame knife cut into the muscles of Virgo's left arm, making a toothache sound, and finally severed it completely. Devil killing. The momentum is still there, and he still cuts towards Virgo's head. At this moment, he has already felt the taste of death. Swish. At this moment, the cyan flames suddenly retracted and poured into Ace's body again. Although the devil demon, without the blessing of the flame, was still extremely sharp, it barely cut through Virgo's domineering, and could not go any further. Dang. Ace staggered back 2 steps, knelt down on one knee, leaning on the ground with the big knife so as not to fall. His face was pale, and he felt that his body could hardly move. Ace muttered to himself with a wry smile. Has the time for the spiritual firebody art come up? It's really not the time. Ha, ha ha. Virgo's left arm had been cut off and fell to the ground, with blood gushing out continuously, but there was a ferocious smile on his face. Although he was already dying, he couldn't move. If he killed one, there are more than enough people. Brat, I'm going to tear you to pieces. Ace, who was extremely weak, sat on the ground at this time, without any worry on his face, but smiled with relief. I said, Virgo, you seem to have forgotten something. Here, it's not just the two of us. Personal. Sure enough, when Virgo heard this, his face changed wildly. Of course, the other two boys were not afraid of him in his prime, but now he is at the end of his battle. Virgo immediately stood up, and only had time to force the last trace of domineering, and an indifferent voice came into his ears. Room. As soon as the words fell, a circle of light blue mask spread over, instantly enclosing Virgo within the mask. It was Luo's surgery fruit ability, and as soon as the aperture reached, Luo's dagger pierced Virgo's body. Clang! With one stab, Virgo's body shone with a faint black light, and there was no sign of injury. Ha ha ha. I'm domineering. Seeing that he was completely fine, Virgo laughed wildly and said, "You can't kill me, ha ha ha." Seeing this scene, Luo thought that the enemy was right in front of him, but he had nothing to do with him. The anger in my heart was mixed with despair, and I could only stab the dagger down again and again in vain. Use, ghost cry. Ace, who was sitting on the ground, realized that this knife turned out to be Luo's later saber, the demon sword, ghost cry. When Luo carried, ghost cry, behind his back. "Didn't you want me to guide you? Now, pull out the ghost and cry." Ace's voice woke Luo from despair. Luo Rumang woke up, and immediately took ghost cry into his hand according to Ace's request, and pulled it out with a bang. All of a sudden, a burst of black air surged, ghost crying. The whole body of the sword let out a joyful sword chant. Willie on the side looked over suddenly, and said with a shocked expression, "Master Base is right, ghost cry actually has a sword spirit. The awakening of the sword spirit means that it has met a truly recognized master. And such a demon sword with a sword spirit, even if it has no grade, it is still a rare treasure." Virgo's eyelids twitched as he watched. He was about to turn around and run away, and at the same time he threatened in a stern voice, "Stinky boy, you dare to touch me? Have you forgotten the commandment of blood of the Don Quixote family? As long as I get hurt, you have to suffer the punishment of impalement." But it was good that he didn't mention this. After listening to his words, Luo immediately remembered that he wanted to assassinate Grassen 5 years ago, but Krassen helped him hide it. As soon as he thought that Virgo was one of the culprits who killed Klassen, Luo's tears couldn't stop pouring out, and without hesitation, he rushed forward with the knife. Of course Virgo will not sit still. He bounced up suddenly, and said in a low voice, "Moonstep." Then he kicked the air and rushed into the air. In the air, he shouted at the three of Ace with a hideous face, "Ace? Luo, and that Willie, I remember you. The next time we meet is your time of death." Luo Zheng didn't know what to do. At this time, Ace's words came, "Think carefully about the medical knowledge you have learned over the years. Integrate them into your abilities." After listening to Ace's words, Luo suddenly felt a sense of enlightenment, and raised his knife to face Virgo. Broom scalpel. Hum. Luo's thin body suddenly disappeared in place, and the next moment he appeared behind Virgo, holding ghost cry with both hands, and a still beating heart on the tip of the knife. Wow. Virgo felt the sharp pain from his heart and the extra hole in his chest, and he suddenly froze in the air. Turning his head slowly, he saw Luo's indifferent eyes behind him, and he seemed to see a kind of determination in them, a determination of revenge. Virgo's pupils gradually dilated, and he suddenly regretted, "Dover, are we wrong?" Thump. Virgo's body fell from the sky, and after Luo fell to the ground, he knelt on one knee, panting heavily. But there was joy in his eyes. 2 tears flowed down. Luo turned his head to the direction of the new world, and shouted, "Brother Dio Flaming, sooner or later, I will use your head to pay homage to Krassen." As soon as the voice fell, Luo also fell to the ground with a plop. Huh. Willie rushed to Luo's side, hugged him to Ace, and asked, "Master Ace, what's wrong with him?" Ace's face was also a little pale, but he still endured the weakness, stepped forward to check, and exhaled after a while. "It's okay, he's just out of strength. His devil fruit needs to consume energy. The move just now is for him now. It's still too much of a stretch." "I also feel that Luo's move just now is very powerful," Willie praised sincerely. Ha ha ha. Ace couldn't help laughing. "Of course, he's a death surgeon. Besides, you're pretty good too." Willie had his revenge at this moment, and already wanted to follow Ace wholeheartedly, so when he heard Ace's praise for him, he was very happy and scratched his head shyly. Woo woo woo. At this moment, harsh sirens suddenly sounded outside the palace. Then suddenly a housekeeper came in and shouted eagerly as he ran, "Master Domir, it's bad. A group of Marines has entered the city of Gaia. We can't stop it. Hurry up." As soon as he spoke, his voice stopped abruptly, and the scene in the auction house made him fall to the ground in fright. Glancing at Dormir's body, and then at the three of Ace who were staring at him, he tremblingly said, "You. You are. Who are you? What happened to do, Master Dormir?" Ace has regained some strength at this moment, stood up, and took the devil demon back into the space of different fires. He asked a little funny. What's wrong with Domir, didn't you see it? As for us, we are the Navy. Ace bared his teeth, and leaned in front of this man. Poker, boss. Dormir has committed a heinous crime and has been punished. Now please cooperate with us and hand over the stolen goods. Although the man looked terrified, he still said stubbornly, What? What stolen goods? I don't know. Willie. It seems that someone is going to resist to the end. Ace's eyes were serious, he put his hands behind his back, and stood up straight. Yes. Your lord. Because of his connection with Ace, Willie immediately understood what Ace meant. With a flash of the imprint between his brows, blue flames covered his right hand, and lightly stroked against a marble table beside him. Kai. The 1-foot-thick marble was instantly divided into 2 halves, which was even easier than cutting tofu. The housekeeper lying on the ground kicked his legs in fright, and retreated to the corner. The expression on his face was full of fear. He couldn't even imagine what the consequences would be if this palm cut himself. Now, you should know where the stolen goods are. Ace showed a harmless smile again, and Willie cooperated with him and walked slowly towards the butler, the flame in his hand beating slightly. You. Don't come here. I know. I know. The housekeeper had no way to retreat, almost crying, I'll take you there right now. Haha, that's right. Ace laughed heartily, then hugged Luo, and walked out of the auction hall first. Behind him, Willie picked up the butler and followed him like a chicken. However, the moment Willie's hand touched the butler almost fainted from fright. At this moment, next to the kingdom of Gaia, a naval warship has dropped anchor. Zephyr is standing on the bow with more than 30 second stage students, holding a phone bug with freckles in his hand, and his face is a bit ugly said. Ace, this stinky boy. Dare not answer my phone. I gave him the phone bug, did I let him keep it as a pet? Besides Zephyr, besides Smoker and Tina, there is also a male sailor with a green katana on his back and unusually slender limbs. He said while dancing, it seems that teacher Zephyr likes this Ace very much. Yo, the tone is full of concern. Bins. Do you want the teacher to give you special training again? Haha. Tina on the side couldn't help but covered her mouth and teased. Bins is another member of the Neo Navy besides Ain after Zephyr rebelled against the Navy, a person with the ability to prosper fruit. He can dance to manipulate nearby plants and speed up their growth. Now it seems that he should also be one of the 5 elite students. Ha ha ha. After hearing Tina's words, the second stage students all laughed together, including Drake and Ain who had just joined. Obviously, most of the students have a good relationship. And they didn't think that this task would be difficult, after all, their lineup this time is really strong. Okay. I don't know why the Brigadier General in Beihai can't be contacted anymore, cheer me up. After all, Zephyr has spent most of his life fighting on this sea, and he will not take his guard lightly at any time, so he flipped his cloak and ordered, just in case, let's act in advance now. Yes. As soon as the mission started, no one was joking anymore. Shave. The next moment, the 34 second stage students, together with Zephyr at the head, all disappeared on the deck of the warship in an instant, and then suddenly appeared on the beach of the island. Call. At this time, there was a circle of white airwaves on the warship that slowly dissipated. As expected of a group of students with the most potential in the naval training base, on the warship, there were also ordinary sailors responsible for maintenance and navigation. After seeing this scene, they all showed envious expressions and couldn't help admiring. That's right, even the 3 students who just joined have learned to shave now. Are they called Drake, Ian and Ryan? Haha, you don't know. 4 people were selected as the second stage students this time. A sailor said proudly, the last one is called Ace, but he directly became the last elite student. What? The news immediately made the sailors widen their eyes in shock, sparking heated discussions, and at the same time aroused a sense of admiration for Ace, whom he had never seen before. At this time, the second stage students had followed Zephyr through the woods and entered the city of Gaia. Dozens of sailors in Navy uniforms looked extremely eye-catching, so they were immediately spotted by members of playing cards. After a while, hundreds of people gathered and surrounded them. Stop. The leader held a musket, pointed at Zephyr and shouted, this is Gaia, if you haven't joined the world government, your navy is not qualified to come in. As far as I know, the city guards should be responsible for Gaia's safety. Are you the city guards? Zephyr raised his eyebrows. Huh. What are the city guards? The man said arrogantly, now the whole of Gaia is under our playing cards control. Oh? So, you are all members of playing cards? Zephyr asked again. Seeing that Zephyr was unexpectedly easygoing, the man puffed out his chest proudly, and deliberately exposed the organization logo on his chest. Of course, if you are sensible, you should leave quickly, otherwise I am afraid that the gun in my hand will be careless. Fire. The students at the training base wore the uniforms of ordinary sailors because they hadn't graduated yet, and Zephyr had always been informal, so there was nothing to show his identity except for the cloak. So in the eyes of these playing card members, this group of sailors is just an old man with a group of children. Oh, then there's no problem. Zephyr grinned after listening to the man's words. Students obey orders. Yes. Death to the rebels. Zephyr calmly said 4 words. The leader felt something was wrong when he heard that Zephyr was so arrogant, and immediately ordered, shoot me. Boom. Boom. Immediately, dozens of muskets shot out tongues of fire at Zephyr and the others at the same time. On. With a sound, Smoker rushed out first. A cloud of smoke rolled up from his body. He simply ignored the bullets and let the bullets pass through his body. The rest of the students were also completely unafraid of the bullets, and rushed over directly. And Zephyr, who was behind, with his hands behind his back, nodded in satisfaction when he saw this scene, and a few bullets hit him. Clang clang. 2 sparks splashed and were bounced aside. The students rushed into the surrounding crowd in an instant, and with a light punch, they knocked down all the hundreds of playing card members. Those who just shot, without exception, walked into death. If you shoot, you must be prepared to be killed. It seems that the kingdom of Gaia has been completely subverted. You search separately, and you must find their headquarters. Seeing this bloody scene, Zephyr didn't even blink his eyelids. After that, he has long since abandoned the name of not killing. Yes. When the trainees heard Zepha's order, they immediately accepted it. The swishing sound kept ringing, and not long after, the students had all scattered away, leaving only a corpse on the spot. At the same time, under the leadership of the butler, the 3 of Ace came to a secret room. The butler obsequiously handed a key to Ace. He had already discovered that the 3 of them were dominated by this child. My lord, this is the key to the storage room. All the items in this auction are here. There is no guard in such an important place. Ace asked instead of reaching out to pick it up. The butler didn't know why, but he couldn't help sweating when talking to Ace. He wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and said, Master Domir doesn't trust others to take care of it, so only he and I know here. Oh. Is he so worried about you? Ace asked jokingly. No. That's because the villain's strength is low, and the lives of the whole family are in his hands, so I dare not be greedy. The housekeeper was sweating profusely. Haha. Don't be nervous, I have no other intentions. Ace smiled, patted him on the shoulder, took the key, and inserted it into the keyhole of the door. Turn it vigorously in your hand, and with a click, the mechanism in the lock cylinder pops open. Ace and the others did not hesitate, raised their hands, pushed the door open and walked in. Crunch. The heavy door was slowly pushed open, and the light outside the door also shone into the dark secret room. After Ace walked into the secret room, he found that the room was not big, only about a dozen square meters, and the auction items were placed in various exquisite boxes by category. My lord, let me introduce you. I have to say, this butler has a strong ability to read words and expressions, and when he saw the change in Ace's expression, he immediately came over obsequiously. Oh? Tell me. Ace was also happy to have someone help, saving him the trouble of checking everything. The butler immediately walked to the far left of the secret room, pointed to an oil painting with some complacency and said, First of all, this, my son, was painted 10 years ago by the famous painter Cabos. It can be said to be priceless. It was originally collected by the noble Tianlong people on Mariajo, but 4 years ago, Fisher Tiger made a big fuss about Mariajo. It was in chaos and disappeared since then, but it came into our hands. Stop. Ace quickly stopped the butler's next words. Judging from what he meant, it seemed like he was going to talk all day. Don't introduce these artworks, just find out the devil fruits and swords for me first. Bundle. Ace also admires the Murloc hero Fisher Tiger in his heart. He actually understands that these works of art are indeed priceless, but it is obvious that the devil fruit and the sharp knife are more important to him. Oh well. Seeing that Ace refused to let him continue to introduce the artwork, the butler weakly changed the direction and walked over. Hey. Did you secretly show a contemptuous expression just now? You are now a prisoner. A little enlightened. Ace's face turned black, but he didn't point it out. Unexpectedly, the butler was quite fascinated by art. The back of the lot this time is placed according to the value. First of all, there are 2 Liangkuai knives, mother, and child. They are a set of knives, so the real value is far more than 2 ordinary knives. Good and fast knives add up. Ace followed the butler's fingers and found that there were indeed 2 knives, one long and one short, and the scabbards were of the same type. For true knife lovers, this is indeed a rare treasure, but Ace can't help but feel a little disappointed. After all, for him, Whether it is a set or not, is it the same effect if it is absorbed by the different fire system? Continue. With his right hand, Ace swiped the two knives of child and mother, and the two knives disappeared directly in front of everyone present. The butler's eyelids twitched when he saw it, and Willie held Luo in his arms, adored Ace even more, and thought to himself. As expected of an adult, the butler didn't dare to do any small tricks this time. He originally thought that Ace was the second-generation ancestor, and the other two were sent by the family to protect Ace. But the two knives disappeared right in front of the butler, leaving no trace behind. What if you wipe it on yourself? The housekeeper shuddered, not daring to think too much, and continued to introduce more respectfully. There are 3 devil fruits below. The housekeeper stepped forward and gently opened 3 beautifully decorated gift boxes, revealing the 3 fruits inside. There are different types of fruit, but all are dotted with mysterious spiral patterns on the skin. Tell me, what kind of fruits are they? Ace also showed an expression of interest at the moment. After all, devil fruits are one of the most precious and magical things in the world of One Piece. Who would think there are too many of them? If you don't use it yourself, you can also give it to your friends and subordinates. Think about it. From now on, just see who is pleasing to the eye, and wave your hand, reward. A devil fruit was handed over. Think a little excited. We don't know the specific fruit ability, but we only know that there are 2 animal type and 1 superhuman type among the 3. The butler replied a little nervously. Is there no nature type? Ace was a little disappointed. After all, he had seen 5 devil fruits, and none of them were nature type fruits. No. The housekeeper kept his expression on the surface, but he was slandering in his heart. Who has the natural system and will put it up for auction? Understood, you continue. Ace waved his hand. Willie, keep everything. Yes. At this time, Willie also knew the value of these fruits. After hearing Ace's order, he immediately put Luo gently on the ground, and happily found a package to wrap all 3 fruits. The corner of the housekeeper's mouth twitched, but thinking of the fighting power of these people, he immediately continued to introduce them cowardly. The following is the most important item in this auction. The butler walked to the center of the secret room, pointed to a gorgeous Western-style coffin with a length of nearly 4 meters on the ground, and said, "This is it." Coffin? Ace was stunned. It's unlucky to buy this thing back. My lord, this is not a coffin. The steward also gave up the treatment now, but fortunately he replied without reservation. This is a sword box. Sword box? This is the first time I've heard of it. Ace is not afraid to reveal his limited knowledge. After all, there is no limit to learning, just ask more. Some swords are too sharp, and after being inserted into the scabbard, they will definitely be cut in half, so they can only be stored in a box with a larger internal space. The butler was also a little excited when he said this, and immediately walked to the left of the coffin. Click. After 2 beeps, the lid was lifted. Ace had already been a little itchy by the housekeeper, so he quickly looked closely. Wow. After Ace saw the appearance of this knife, his whole body couldn't help shaking, and he couldn't help shouting. The supreme sword, Knight. At this moment, in the coffin box, on the soft and smooth silk satin, lay quietly a black cross-shaped long knife with countless random blades and heavy flowers dotted on the knife body. Isn't it the legendary Yi? This is one of only 12 supreme sharp knives in the whole world. It's right in front of me now. Is this a dream? But isn't this sword the world's strongest swordsman, Hawkeye Mihawk's saber? Why are you here? Maybe it's because in the 13 years of the Great Pirate, Hawkeye hasn't obtained the supreme sword, Knight, yet? Countless thoughts flashed through Ace's mind, but after he swallowed, he couldn't help asking. Didn't you say that the auction will be a big sharp knife? Nobody hates surprises, do they? The butler shrugged. But Ace didn't care about the butler's answer, but excitedly shouted to the system in his heart, quick! Swallow it quickly, then I can be directly promoted to lieutenant general, or even quasi-general. The system actually sent him a string of colons? Several meanings. Hey, hurry up. Seeing that the system hadn't responded yet, Ace urged, you don't want to fix the main body quickly, I want to add 2 more different fires quickly. Please host yourself. The system finally got impatient with the noise, and replied, first of all, you can't directly upgrade to a higher level by devouring katana swords. Secondly, I can only devour good and fast swords at most now. Only a lieutenant general can swallow a big sharp knife, and so on. That is to say, you can't do it. Ace was a little disappointed, and couldn't help complaining. The system was full of black lines, and wanted to refute, men can't say no, but in the end they chose not to speak. However, the disappointment is only temporary. After all, this is a great sharp knife. Thinking of this, Ace immediately took out Yi from the coffin with some excitement, carried it on his body, and the freckles on the bridge of his nose seemed to be glowing with excitement. Lord Ace. Willie looked a little enviously at the side, and gave Ace a thumbs up. Handsome. Haha. Pull the wind. Ace adjusted his hat, and decided to keep this look for the time being. At this time, Luo, who was lying on the ground, slowly woke up from his coma. After being in a daze for a while, when he saw Ace, he immediately stood up and bent forward at 90 degrees, bowing. Ace is in charge. Thank you this time. Let me kill Virgo and avenge myself. Haha. You're welcome, it's just a matter of little effort. Ace smiled and helped Luo up. Luo didn't speak, but obviously he had firmly remembered Ace's kindness in his heart. He held Ghost Cry in both hands, with some reluctance in his eyes, but still respectfully handed it to Ace. Ace didn't answer, but turned his gaze to Willie, who was on the side. My lord, Ghost Cry is already yours, you can deal with it as you like. Besides, I think the sword spirit of Ghost Cry has already approved Luo, why not? Willie understood Ace's meaning at once. Haha, that's right. From today onwards, this knife is yours. Ace pushed Luo's hands back and said with a smile. This. Luo obviously didn't expect Ace and Willie to give him such a precious thing as soon as they opened their mouths. You must know that this is a sword spirit demon knife that is even rarer than the big fast knife. Luo was very moved, and he gritted his teeth and said, Ace is in charge, if you don't dislike me, I will follow you from now on. Luo said this after some thought. Although he killed Virgo himself, it was because Ace had severely injured Virgo before. And my enemy is the entire Don Quixote family, and there are even stronger top cadres, as well as the terrifying Doflamingo. If only relying on himself, Luo didn't know how long it would take to get revenge. In addition, Ace pointed out the direction of the development of the fruit of the operation in a sentence before, letting Luo know that as long as he follows Ace, he will definitely become stronger faster in the future. Haha. Of course. After hearing Luo's words, how could Ace refuse? You must know that Luo is not only very talented in medical skills, but also has a strong combat power after 10 years. Moreover, Ace is also confident that the time required for him to become stronger will be greatly shortened. Although Ace has joined the Navy now, he still yearns for an adventurous life, and if he wants to go to sea, an excellent ship doctor is essential. Is there a more suitable bureau? However, I need to go to neighboring town, on the nearby Swallow Island first. There are some friends of mine there. Luo hesitated for a while and said, because I want to study medicine, I first came to the kingdom of Gaia, but I promised to go back and pick them up. Ace's heart moved, recalling the plot of One Piece. After Luo escaped from Minion Island a year and a half ago, he should have fled to the neighboring town of Swallow Island. On Beihai Swallow Island, there were two bad boys, Sha Chi and Pei Jin. When bullying the white bear Babo, he was cleaned up by Luo, who was passing by. From then on, Ice Bear and the two bad boys adored Luo. In the subsequent plot, it should have been that Beppo wanted to go back to Elephant Island and study navigation desperately. In the end, the four formed the Heart Pirates together and went out to sea for adventure. How is Beppo's nautical science? Ace asked with a smile. The white bear is the ancient race of the fur tribe in the country of Zhou. Natural-born warrior. Ace was also interested. But his words fell into Luo's ears, and once again he was too shocked to speak. Ace also knew that his words were abrupt, and he touched his nose in embarrassment and said, I just have some special abilities, and I can predict some futures. Luo didn't fully believe Ace's words, but his awe of Ace deepened. My lord. Can I go? Seeing that Ace stopped talking, the butler on the side said a little nervously, I still have a wife and children, I'm just a part-time worker. Today, Ace not only harvested 2 good sharp knives, 3 devil fruits, and 1 supreme sharp knife, but also won the hearts of Willie and Luo. It can be said that it is a big profit. So Ace was in a good mood, so he didn't worry about the moisture in the butler's words. After patting him on the shoulder, he said, okay, it's none of your business, let's go. After hearing Ace's words, the housekeeper immediately nodded and bowed to thank him as if he had received an amnesty, then turned around and ran away. My lord, do you just let him go? Willie said with some concern. Domir trusts him so much, his identity is definitely not as simple as he said. Haha. Don't worry, I just patted him on the shoulder and planted a trace of fire in his body. It's okay if he doesn't move or have any crooked thoughts. As long as we don't encounter anything within a month, the fire will naturally dissipate. And if there is any change in him. Ace's eyes turned cold, then he doesn't want to leave the whole body. Willie naturally understood what Ace was thinking. Ace didn't want to kill innocent people by mistake. Although this made Willie admire Ace's character even more, he was still inexplicably worried. I hope nothing will happen, Willie thought to himself. Okay, let me make some arrangements for you, Ace said, You must already know my identity. I am a Navy. Willy's complexion did not change. No matter what Ace's identity was, he had already followed Ace. Luo's face was a little complicated, but he was quickly relieved when he thought of the noble qualities Ace showed in front of him today. The expressions of the two fell into Ace's eyes. He nodded in satisfaction, and then said with a slanted corner of his mouth, "My identity is not important. The important thing is that you are my partners from today. Willy, there are 50 Baileys here. You take them first. Go to Swallow Island with Luo to pick up Beppo and the others." Ace took out 50 Baileys from his arms and stuffed them into Willy's pocket. "Because of my status, I have to go back to the naval base first, so I won't go with you this time." After speaking, he handed another phone bug to Luo, and said, "Don't worry. I will definitely go back to find you within half a year. During this period, we will contact the phone bug." "Yes." Willy and the two put away their things and responded in unison. "What about these devil fruits?" Willy asked hesitantly. Ace looked at Luo with a smile, and said, "Take them all away. If Bebo and the others want it, they can choose one each. However, I can't guarantee that these fruits are not some strange abilities, haha." Luo didn't know what to say at this moment, and his emotions kept surging. At this moment, Ace's expression suddenly changed. He felt a group of people pouring into the palace, and immediately swept over with his knowledge color. "Hurry up and go over the wall from the back first, take everything with you." Ace quickly explained to Willy and the two that it was the naval students headed by Zephyr who came. If Zephyr and the others discovered the existence of Willy and Luo, it would not be so easy for the two of them to leave. At least a record-keeping process would be indispensable. More importantly, with the devil fruit already in hand, Ace is not noble enough to hand it over to the organization for a pennant or something. Willy and Luo were also very obedient. Without any hesitation, they ran straight to the back wall of the palace, and disappeared into the night not long after. "The next time we meet is probably a few months away." Ace took a deep breath and walked towards the auction hall. In the auction hall at this moment, the students from the training base gradually appeared here, and Zephyr stood in front of the crowd with his hands behind his back, looking at the two corpses in front of him, lost in thought. On the wounds left by the corpse, there were traces of being stabbed by high-temperature flames, and some parts were even charred and carbonized. The moment Zephyr saw the corpse, he naturally thought of Ace. After all, Ace, who has the ability to fire, is the most likely person who caused the deaths of these two people. But he looked at Virgo's body on the ground, with a deep sense of worry on his face. "Teacher Zephyr, that corpse in a white suit is the boss of playing cards, Domir." Tina had already checked the corpse, and said hesitantly, "However, the other corpse seems to be the North Sea Commodore Virgo." Zephyr said the name with a serious face. "Could they have died together?" A student immediately murmured in a low voice, "This brigadier general is really, he agreed to wait for us to act together." "Are you stupid?" Looking at the wounds on the two of them, it is obvious that they were killed by the same person. Although what this person said was not entirely correct, it was close to the truth. After all, Willy also killed Domir with a strange fire, and Ace also chopped off one of Virgo's arms with Chinglian flame slash. Zephyr didn't speak, but the expression on his face told the students behind him that he was not at peace. If this Beihai Commodore was also killed by Ace, this time he can only deal with it according to the rules. After all, this incident was completely different from the duel with Barranca. It was a blatant massacre of colleagues. "Felony. I hope he can give me a reasonable explanation," Zephyr sighed. At this moment, Ace's figure appeared at the door of the auction hall, and he came in front of everyone in a flash. He saluted Zephyr directly, bowed and said, "Teacher. HMPH. Seeing Ace, Zephyr couldn't help but turn dark. "Boy. What about the phone bug I gave you? You still don't take my teacher's words to heart." When Ace heard Zfa's words, his expression froze, and then he remembered that he had forgotten the teacher's phone bug in the rental house, which was embarrassing. But then there was a touch of emotion in his heart. He knew that Zephyr really cared about him, otherwise he would not be asking about phone bugs. He would definitely ask what happened to the two corpses first. "Teacher, I'm sorry, I forgot to be in the rental house." Ace's face was full of apology, and he was really embarrassed. After hearing what he said, Zephyr just sighed, and then continued, "Forget it, as long as you are fine, remember it next time, and you must take the phone bug with you when you go out for missions, so only the follow-up team can support in time." Zephyr thought about it for a while, and ESDU nodded respectfully and kept saying yes, feeling more and more moved in his heart. Ace lost his parents since he was a child, and basically didn't feel the concern from his elders. Although Dayton and Garp cared about him in their hearts, they expressed it in a very special way. Faye looked very disgusted. But Zephyr completely expressed his concern for Ace in words. I can't say the pros and cons of the two methods, but Ace really accepted Zephyr at this moment. He is even thinking about whether there is a certain method that allows him to satisfy his pursuit of adventure and freedom without letting Zephyr down on himself. Before Ace could come up with a solution, Zephyr's nagging had stopped. He knew that this matter had to be clarified, so even though he had vaguely guessed what happened here, he still wanted to confirm it again. What the hell is going on here? Ace actually didn't expect Zephyr and others to come over so soon, so he didn't have enough time to make arrangements and deal with all the scenes here. He knew no nonsense, and he wouldn't lie to Zephyr, so he decided to tell the truth. Ace took a deep breath and said calmly, "I killed everyone." Luo did it under his guidance, and Willie's ability even came from Ace, so there is no problem in saying that. But the moment he said it, the scene instantly fell silent. Except for Drake and Ian, most of the students looked at Ace in a different way. Murdering colleagues without reason is a serious crime. I think I will be imprisoned in the legendary undersea prison, a student murmured. It's the Imper hell from which no one can escape. I heard that all the prisoners who entered it would be worse than death. The students all looked at Ace with pity. He is an elite student in the training base at such a young age. He has a bright future. Ace, do you know what I'm talking about? I hope to hear your explanation. ZFA's expression sank at this time. He likes Ace very much, but it doesn't mean he will do it for Ace play favoritism and pervert the law. Even if he is his own son, if he commits a serious crime, Zephyr will personally send him to prison. I understand. Ace said seriously. I believe that you already know his identity for this Domir. As the boss of poker. I think it is not a pity for him to die. And he has another identity, he is a member of the Don Quixote family. ZFA's pupils shrank when he heard this, and he had already seen the Don Quixote family logo on Domir's back. Dover stretched his hands too far. After returning, it's time for Lieutenant General He to put more pressure on them, Zephyr thought to himself. And that Virgo, he is a spy arranged by the Don Quixote family in the Navy. Ace's words were not astonishing and endless, and the moment he opened his mouth, everyone present was speechless, and an uproar ensued. What? How is it possible? Yes, how could pirates dare to arrange spies in the Navy? It's not Ace who wants to exonerate himself and frame this Commodore General. The students talked a lot, and many people turned their suspicious eyes to Ace. After all, there is no proof now, and it's not just whatever Ace says. Anyway, Virgo wouldn't stand up and refute. Don't talk about Brother Ace like that. Jan rushed out when he heard people say that about Ace. His eyes were already a little wet, and said eagerly to Ace, "Brother, tell them quickly, they are all nonsense." Ace looked at the tears in the corners of Ian's eyes, and couldn't help showing pity in his heart. He quickly reached out to help her wipe the tears away, and comforted her with a smile. "Silly girl. Why are you crying? Of course, my brother is telling the truth. What do they love? Whatever you say, I'll be fine. Ace is my brother of Drake. I believe in him." Drake also stood up immediately. Ace was moved in his heart, but was a little surprised to find that there were 3 people who also chose to believe him. Smoker, Tina, and Ryan. Isn't this the second sword student in the group arena? The person who was defeated by him when he was 5-3, unexpectedly he also became a second stage student. Surprisingly, he is a good guy. Zephyr fell into silence from the very beginning, and he was not disturbed by the intense discussions of the students. After everyone gradually calmed down, he finally said, "Bins, put Ace first." Yes. Although Bins always jumped out of tune, he was the one who listened to Zephyr's words the most. After hearing Zephyr's order, he immediately put on his gloves and took out a seastone handcuff, and walked towards Ace. Past. Ace didn't want to resist. He knew that Zephyr must have his own concerns, so he stretched his hands forward, ready to be handcuffed. "I don't allow it. You are not allowed to treat my brother like this." A small figure suddenly rushed out, with his arms outstretched, blocking Ace's face, and said in a crying voice, "Brother Ace is so nice, don't you? Would lie. This figure is IN." After she said this, seeing that Zephyr still did not respond, she could only turn her eyes to the rest of the students for help. Help Ace. But this time, even Smoker, Tina, and Ren chose to remain silent and stood still. After all, Zephyr had already given the order. Only Drake didn't speak, and stood silently with Ain, blocking Ace's body, holding weapons in both hands, and staring closely at Bins, who was getting closer. Obviously ready to shoot at any time. Ace looked at the 2 who stood in front of him without hesitation, and suddenly felt a sense of happiness welling up in his heart. With such a group of partners who trust him unconditionally, what is there to be dissatisfied with? Hey. Zephyr had been watching quietly, and finally sighed at this moment, knowing that he would have no choice but to explain. "Ain, Drake, you 2 are good. I also believe in Ace is telling the truth, but you need to know that the rules are the rules. Now that Ace is suspected, he has to control it first." Speaking of this, ZFA's tone became much softer, and he continued. I assure you, I will investigate the truth as soon as possible and return Ace to freedom. But before that, he and the prisoner captured this time need to be arrested. Transport them back to the Navy headquarters together. No. I don't want my brother to be arrested. But this time, Ain was unexpectedly stubborn. He didn't listen to ZFA's words at all. He bit his lip, his eyes were reddish, and firmly blocked Ace behind him. In her heart, Ace was going to be wronged, so Ain was very wronged. The next second, In suddenly felt himself being embraced from behind, and Ace's gentle voice came into her ears. In, thank you. In's mind was blank at this time. She didn't know why Ace hugged him suddenly, so she could only bury her head in Ace's arms shyly. The reason why Ace would do this is because he has always been alone, whether in the previous life of the One Piece world or the soul of the Earth world. For the first time, he felt the unreserved concern of the opposite sex. He didn't know if it was love or not, he only knew. Very warm. Don't worry, brother assures you, I will definitely protect myself, Ace said softly. Seeing In raising his little head, still with a worried expression on his face, Ace raised his little finger in front of her and said with a smile, come on, Lagu. In wrinkled his little nose, and finally nodded. He raised his hand and put his little finger on Ace's finger, shaking it vigorously, you keep your word. After finishing speaking, he reluctantly got out of Ace's arms, and retreated with a blushing face. Perhaps the way of pulling the hook was a little childish, but Ace still put this promise in his heart solemnly, determined to protect this beautiful relationship well. But the operation of the two really blinded the eyes of the people around them. Even Drake and Zephyr were a little dumbfounded. What is this? Is this atmosphere suitable for spilling dog food? And you two are only 11 years old. Puppy love, dear. The only one in the audience is Tina, who has bright eyes. Childhood sweetheart, don't be too perfect. Ahem. Zephyr didn't know what to say. After all, the originally heavy atmosphere turned in a strange direction inexplicably. He could only cough twice and urged, Binz, what are you looking at, hurry up. Binz stepped forward with some reluctance, and put the handcuffs on Ace's hands. I cursed in my heart. I don't want to be this villain. Why me? Next, Zephyr ordered Smoker and Tina to lead half of the students to stay in the Gaia Kingdom to deal with the mess left by playing cards. After all, the underground forces that came had to be dealt with, and because the Gaia royal family had been killed, maintaining the stability of the entire kingdom was also a big problem. And Zephyr led the rest of the students, escorted Ace and other prisoners onto the warship, and headed straight for the Navy headquarters. At the same time, in a remote dwelling in the kingdom of Gaia, the butler released by Ace was holding a phone bug to contact someone. Young master, Lord Virgo is dead. Ah. The phone bug in his hand was wearing a pair of red sunglasses with a white frame. After hearing his words, there was a sudden burst of weird laughter. Fu Furfur, Gear, are you kidding me? Dare curse the top cadre of the family. Do you want to experience the taste of impalement? When the butler Gear heard this term, he immediately shrank his neck in fright. The piercing punishment used 72 1-meter-long steel needles to directly pierce the human body. No one would want to experience that kind of pain, but at this moment he could only bite the bullet and continue. Young master. It's true. Master Virgo came to inform Domir to retreat, but was bumped into by a navy named Ace. I was killed by him. Master Virgo is so miserable, young master. Woo. Shut up. The smile on Doflamingo's face over there has long since disappeared, and a vein is popping up on his forehead. Tell me the whole process. If you say one more nonsense, I promise you will die a miserable death. Gear shivered in fright. He knew that his young master had always kept his word, and his methods were extremely cruel, so he immediately told all the things he knew. After listening to Gear's narration, Dover hung up the phone immediately. He was now in Dressrosa, the second half of the Great Route. It was about to drip out of water, so it was silent for a full 15 minutes. Suddenly, the corner of his mouth rose sharply, he stuck out his tongue and licked his lips, and let out another creepy laugh. Foofer Furfer, is your name Ace? My many years of plans fell short because of you. You don't want to die so easily, Torapol. Hey, I said, Dover, what did you ask me to do? In the hall, an old man with a hunched waist slowly walked in. He was wearing a quilt-like quilt with a circle cloak, holding a cane with a plum blossom logo, wearing a pair of small sunglasses, with a half-snot nose on his face. His mouth was full of stubble, his teeth were sparse, and the most disgusting thing was that his whole body seemed to be constantly secreting wet mucus. Virgo is dead. Dover said 5 words with a gloomy face. What? What? With a puff, Torbull sprayed out a stream of mucus, which wet a large area of the floor, and reached out to his pocket in some horror. He rummaged through his pocket with his right hand, but could only pull out a few wisps of black ashes. I said, Virgo's life card has really been reduced to ashes. What's going on, Dover? Toribol appeared next to Dover in a flash, showing his rickety face. The powerful speed that does not match the figure. The life card is a kind of paper that represents the vitality of the owner. It becomes bigger and smaller with the change of the vitality of the owner. When it turns into ashes, it means that the owner is dead. I'll tell you about this matter later, and I'll ask you now, can you intercept and kill a former admiral in the North Sea? Dover already knew that there was Zephyr in the Navy this time, so he knew he had to. If you want to kill Ace, you must pass Zepha's level. Toripol was silent for a while, and then he said, our family's combat power is now participating in the construction of the underground factory in Dressrosa. It is really hard to get away, but even if we start from the New World immediately, it's too late to rush over. Just when Dover's face became more gloomy, Toribol continued, however, there is no way at all. I said, Dover, do you still remember that wonderful mother and son you met a few years ago? It was the one whose son was a fool. After hearing Toribol's words, Doflamingo was obviously taken aback. After thinking for a while, he finally remembered. You're talking about that strange couple who claimed to be a woman with a white beard and her son. Yes, it's the old woman Miss Bajan and his son Edward Wable. When Toribol said this, the expression on his face was very strange, although you and I don't believe that they have anything to do with Whitebeard, but that Wable's strength is indeed terrifying. It's almost at the level of a general. You mean? Dover lifted the pink feather robe on his body, his expression changed. Ask them to do it. That's right. According to the information, these two people are in Beihai now, and that old woman, Miss Ba-jin, is very greedy for money. As long as they give enough money, they will definitely make a move. Toribol said with some hesitation at this time. It's just that if they make a move, the price probably won't be cheap. We are building a factory now, and the funds are a bit stretched. Stop talking. Dover stood up abruptly, with a gloomy expression on his face. I'll give you 100 million Baileys, and you can just go and grab the funds from the underground factory later. How could I let go of my family if I killed them? Past them? Yes. I'll do it now. There was a frenzy in Toribol's eyes, and the mucus all over his body was trembling. The young master regarded them as family members. How could they not work hard? Seeing the figure of Toribol going away, Dover suddenly laughed again. Furfur, that brat named Ace. This time I want everyone around you to be buried with you. At this time, Ace and others had already left the kingdom of Gaia on this warship. The sea was unexpectedly calm, and Ace was sitting cross-legged in the separate cell arranged for him at the moment, with his eyes closed, feeling the changes in his body. Ace is still weak because he used the Spirit Fire Quintessence art when fighting Virgo, but he has let the system swallow the two good sharp knives, child, and mother, and the black energy he obtained it poured into his body continuously. Before this mission, the content on Ace's attribute bar was Attributes. Constitution, Major General, 6 Spiritual Fire Essence Body Ju, the 3rd stage. Body Energy. 23 160ths Different Fire, Qinglian Earth Heart Fire. At this moment, after devouring the 2 good sharp knives, the body energy suddenly increased by 350 points, directly reaching the level of 373. Ace chose to strengthen without thinking, and saw that his attribute bar changed instantly, and a sense of comfort from a strong body surged into Ace's heart. Attributes. Constitution, Major General, 8 Spiritual Fire Essence Body Ju, the 3rd stage. Body Energy. 43 180ths Different Fire, Qinglian Earth Heart Fire. The strength of his body has increased by 2 short periods, and Ace feels the strength gradually recovering in his body. It is estimated that the 1-week period of weakness has now been reduced to 2 days. I can't help but sigh. As expected, the greater the risk, the greater the reward. In the past few months, I squeezed myself desperately and trained at the limit, but I barely improved by 4 small stages. Now the 2 knives have saved me at least 4 months of time. It's just that in the world of One Piece, there are only 47 good knives left at most. Ace's mouth twitched. Sin. Hey. Kid, what did you do? In the cell next door, a bald man with a scar on his face casually approached the iron fence of the cell, and asked eccentrically. The other prisoners are crowded in a cell by more than a dozen people, but Ace has a spacious cell alone, which can't help but make some mentally retarded people feel jealous. They don't even think about it, they are all locked up. Do they still have the heart to think about these things? So Ace was also a little speechless, and after glancing at the bald head, he stopped talking to him at all. Brat. Grandpa is talking to you. Seeing Ace's reaction, the bald head turned black, picked up the stone on the ground and threw it at Ace, but it was not very accurate, and bounced on the ground twice before falling to Ace beside. The prisoners in the surrounding cells all showed expressions of interest after seeing this scene. They were originally a group of desperados who wanted to have some fun in the prison. At this moment, Ace felt a little unhappy, and cast his cold eyes on the bald head. And the bald head became even more excited when he saw so many people paying attention to him. He knocked on the iron cage twice, and laughed at Ace. I said, "Little bastard. Why are you so rude? I don't even know how to answer when I'm talking to you. I'm afraid it's because I was born without a mother, haha." As soon as he laughed, he saw Ace, who was sitting cross-legged, suddenly disappear from the spot, and the next moment, a high-speed kick appeared in front of his eyes. Boom. Clang. The bald-headed body suddenly flew out from the spot, spun 3 or 4 times in the air, spewed out a mouthful of teeth, and then bumped into the iron cage on the other side with a clang, and finally slid down slowly. The whole cell fell silent in an instant, and a needle could be heard. "No one can say that about my mother." Ace slowly withdrew his fist and said with killing intent in his eyes. He straightened his hat, and sat back cross-legged again, but the prisoners in the entire cell did not dare to say a word, and no one even dared to look at the bald head who was already dead. To be honest, Ace doesn't have much affection for the One Piece father, but he loves his mother who has never met from the bottom of his heart. Ace's full name is Portgas D. Ace, and he chose his mother's last name himself. His mother's name is Portgas D. Luju. After the death of Gold D. Roger, the Navy searched the whole island for the blood of One Piece, and arrested all children born within 10 months after Roger's death, to kill Roger's blood in history. But Ace's mother, this great mother, endured for a full 20 months in order to protect her child, and desperately delayed his birth. 1 year and 3 months after Roger's death, she was born in Paris. Ace was born on Terila Island. But she died after giving birth to Ace due to exhaustion. Ace has never seen his mother, and he doesn't even know what she looks like, but he understands that even though his mother is dead, she is still one of the people who loves him the most in this world. No insult. 1 day later, on a deserted island next to the kingdom of Gaia, the housekeeper Gear was guarding a small steamship, looking at the sky boredly. Last night, the young master called again, ordering him to prepare a fast boat and a lifeguard of the arrested members, and then went to this deserted island to wait for reinforcements. In terms of intelligence, the Don Quixote family is actually doing a good job. Just in case, some members of the organization will first make a lifeguard, so that they can provide a location for reinforcements after an accident occurs and they are arrested. As long as the lifeguard is torn off a small piece from the main card, when the piece is placed on a flat surface, it will move slightly in the direction of the owner, which is really miraculous. And now Gear was just lying on the boat, watching the lifeguard in his palm trembling and moving towards the northeast, passing the time. Boom. Click, click, suddenly, the island trembled violently, and Gear quickly put away his lifeguard and stood up. Looking in the direction where the sound came from, Gordon was stunned to find that a pirate ship had crashed into the reef beside the deserted island, and then slowly sank to the bottom of the sea with the sound of wood cracking. And a burly, fat man jumped out of the wreckage, holding a long-handled crescent knife in one hand, and a short blonde old lady in the other, and jumped directly onto the deserted island. Boom. There was another roar, and the hard reef was stepped on by this person to create countless cracks, and countless boulders were smashed into the sea under the vibration, splashing waves nearly 10 meters high. Ma. Our ship crashed and sank. The strong man had blonde hair like a mane, 2 braids on his cheeks that stretched to his chest, and a crescent moon with 2 corners pointing to the sky under his nose-white beard. The blonde old lady was wearing a fur cloak and was covered with jewels. She jumped to the ground at this moment. She was not as tall as the strong man's knees, but at this moment she hit the strong man's calf with her crutches. It's not your fault that you fell asleep while sailing. Why are you so stupid, child? Mama, it hurts so much, the strong man said with a runny nose. I'm sorry, Mama. Hey, the old lady suddenly stopped what she was doing, and there seemed to be little stars shining all over her body, but I won't blame you. Because I love you, said the old lady to the strong man. Mum. The brawny man wiped his nose and was so moved that he was about to cry. Can I ask who you are? Gear on the side had to interrupt the performance of the two. After all, he still had a task to do. N? After hearing Gear's question, the two of them suddenly turned their bodies around at the same time, and said with bright eyes, since you asked this sentence, then we have to expose our own identity. The one next to me is the real son of the world's strongest pirate, Whitebeard's blood, Edward Wable. The old lady slammed her cane towards the ground, and then her expression became serious. The wrinkled mouth opened and closed, and it's the woman Whitebeard loved, Miss Bajan. Huh. Gear's eyes widened in surprise. No one in this sea knows Whitebeard's name. That is the legendary, world's strongest pirate. Is his son the snotty, mentally handicapped man in front of him? And that ugly blonde old lady is Whitebeard's lover? Gear felt that his brain was not enough today, so he could only temporarily put aside his doubts and asked, "Are you the reinforcements invited by the young master?" "If the young master you're talking about is Don Quixote, then you're right. I charge money to do things," Ba Jin replied. "That's good. The clippers have already prepared for you. You just need to chase in the direction indicated by this life card." Gear took out the life card from his pocket. "But before you leave, you can destroy the navy left in Gaia first." "Oh. Okay." Miss Bajin's eyes lit up, and she extended her hand towards Gear with a smile. "Another 100 million Baileys." "What?" Gear thought he didn't hear clearly. "It's very simple. The money we received was to kill all the sailors on that warship. If you want us to kill the sailors on Gaia Island, of course we will ask for a price," Miss Bajin said as a matter of course. "Mama is right. More money." Wabel sniffed hard. Gear quickly handed over the life card. "Think I didn't say anything. Take the life card and chase the warship quickly. If you don't catch up, the young master won't pay for it." "Okay." Ba Jin took the life card, but still stared at Gear closely. "You. What do you want to do?" "Leave me alone, someone will pick me up later." Gear suddenly felt a little bad. "Ha ha ha. Son." Ba Jin suddenly turned and walked towards the steamboat, but her voice still came, "Take that guy with us and let him drive the boat for us." "You can't do this." Gear stepped back in horror. He is an ordinary person without force. If he is involved in a battle, he will definitely not survive. But Wabel's IQ was negative, and he absolutely respected Miss Bajin's words, so he didn't give Gear a chance to escape at all. He held Gear tightly in his palm and walked towards the steamboat. Gear kept struggling, but he couldn't shake Wabel at all. In the end, he could only accept his fate and get on the boat to start the engine, carrying Wabel and Miss King, and chasing in the direction of the warship Ace was on.